Alrighty, chat, let's get started. Welcome to another HealthyGamerGG stream. Just a reminder that although I am a psychiatrist, nothing we discuss on stream today is intended to be taken as medical advice. Everything is for educational or entertainment purposes only. If y'all have a concern or question, please go see a licensed professional. So welcome everybody. Happy Monday. Happy December to everyone in the universe and on the planet. We've got some cool stuff today. Let me see what we have here. Okay. We have an announcement and we've got posts to talk about. This is going to be hype. Okay. So today we're going to be doing a Reddit review and focused on male mental health, which leads into our announcement. So we are launching YouTube memberships. So we are going to start using the memberships feature on YouTube. So people may wonder, why on earth are we doing this? So there are a couple things that I want to talk to y'all about. The first is there are two challenges that I face making content, and I'm hoping that memberships will help with this. The first is I do the same stuff over and over and over again. This is not necessarily bad, but if we look at like HG on the whole, we have almost 2 million subscribers on YouTube. We get watched by about 5 million people a month. Somewhere between 2,000 and 5,000 people join our community every week and have questions for Dr. K, which is great. But this also means that I started streaming 4 years ago and I'm answering the same questions I was answering 4 years ago, which is cool because new people are joining and they have the same questions. They're really important questions. That's fine. The challenge is that for me, it's a little bit frustrating because I spent a lot of time studying in India and studying neuroscience and psychiatry and medicine and Ayurveda and all that good stuff and yoga and meditation. And I never get to the advanced stuff. So memberships are for people who are interested in more depth, okay? So they're gonna be a little bit more applicable. We'll talk about how. Actually, let's just talk about that now. So what we're gonna offer with our membership is 4 lectures a month plus Q&A. So these lectures are going to be different from our standard YouTube or stream content. This is the other problem that is difficult about being a content creator. So here on YouTube, we are at the mercy of the algorithm. And what that means is that we've sort of noticed that we have to make some compromises with the content that we make. Our videos tend to be about 20 minutes long. They have to be sort of like focused on one thing. They can't assume that anyone knows anything. Right? So every YouTube video has to be started from scratch, takes any person on the internet who knows nothing about nothing, and we have to be able to lead them from A to Z. So we hope to solve this problem with memberships. So what we're going to offer is 4 lectures a month plus Q&A. All of these will be live streamed. And the goal is to give people 1-hour lectures that are more academic, more applicable, and more in-depth. So I get to go full professor mode for an hour and talk about nuances and research and all this kind of stuff, okay? Each lecture probably takes me about 6 to 8 hours to prepare. So that means that I'm spending about 24 to 32 hours a month on this endeavor. And the other cool thing is it will not impact any of the other content that we make. So we're going to continue releasing free content via stream and YouTube and everything like that. Our Discord remains completely intact. This is an additional thing that we are adding for people who want more in-depth applicable stuff. Now, the last thing that I think is very, very exciting for me about memberships is right now our community and our content have been separate. So we'll make YouTube videos and sometimes I read our subreddit, for example. People will ask questions on Discord and stuff like that. But so far, these two things have been separate. The other thing that I'm super excited about is y'all may be wondering, okay, which 4 lectures do I do every month? And that's where y'all decide. So the cool thing about the memberships feature is that there's a community aspect to it. So y'all basically vote on whichever lectures you want me to prepare. And if you want me to prepare a meme lecture and that's at the top of the list, like Dr. K explained tantric sex to us, like what's actually the science, spirituality, like all this kind of stuff, we'll do it. If y'all want something that is very targeted or focused, we'll actually do that too. So y'all decide what we're going to be learning. And this is also something that I'm really excited about because right now the way that we make content is we kind of scratch our heads and we say to ourselves, okay, like Dr. K is excited about this, so I want to make a video about this. And then there's some aspect of, okay, we're going to randomly like scour the internet and try to come up with topics. And people seem to be interested in this, so let's make a video about it. But y'all get to decide. So these are the key things that we're really, really focused on in terms of memberships. I've been looking for a way for 4 years to make more in-depth content. And that's where we have things like the guides. And the guides are awesome, but the guides are like basically, I don't know if y'all know this, but each guide requires me to essentially write a full nonfiction book. Like the length of the guide, the scripts for each guide is like the length of basically a book. So it was crazy. The first year I wrote 3 books. Last year I wrote 1. I'm writing 1 now. I actually wrote an actual book somewhere in there. And the problem with the guides is that they're not flexible, right? So the production timeline for a guide is basically about a year. So the cool thing about memberships is y'all get to decide, okay, this week or this month, we want to talk about this, or we want to talk about this, or we want to talk about this. I want to keep our content flexible. I want to keep it applicable, and I want to make it more in depth. And I've been looking for that. Now, some people, may be wondering, have some questions about this and stuff like that. What about price? We haven't talked about price. So the price is $10 a month for our base Healthy Gamer tier. And this is something that's kind of interesting. So we basically give y'all all the value at the base tier. That is sort of what we're about, right? So we try to make mental health content as accessible as possible. So for $10 a month, you get 4 live streamed lectures of topics of your choosing that are an hour long, plus Q&A with Dr. K. You also get supporter stuff, badges, things like that. There are also going to be weekly quests related to the 4 lectures, which y'all can complete. And then there's a second tier, which is AOE Healer, which is $15 a month, $14.99. And that's basically for people who want to give us extra money. You'll get access to some beta features for things that we're developing and tools that we built in the past, like Right in the Fields, emotion trackers and stuff like that. So you may get early access to stuff, but we're going to be super transparent that the base tier is where the value is, and the additional tier is for people who want to give us money. And I know that sounds kind of bizarre. But for 4 years, people have been saying, Dr. K, start a Patreon. Dr. K, do this. Hey, Dr. K, why don't you do subathons? We've done very, very limited amounts of fundraising from our community and subathons and Patreon and stuff like that. I know there are things out there that can allow y'all to give us more money, which is cool. Like, don't get me wrong. But to be completely honest, I've been reluctant to do any of those things for about 4 years, simply because for me, like, if y'all are giving us money, there should be some value towards it. It doesn't necessarily need to be towards yourself. So like sometimes we've done fundraising and things like that, which is totally fine. But like we want to be very clear about what you're giving us money for. And so this is just a tier that like literally sometimes, like one time I got an email from someone who was like, hey, can I send you this pile of money? And I was like, no, you cannot. And then they found a way to send some anyway. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But like, this is where, if y'all want to give us money and support the work that we do, if you want to give us additional funding so that we can build more free tools, build more YouTube videos, things like that, then y'all can give us that money. But that's really what the second tier is for. You'll get access to some early features, like maybe some beta stuff, things like that. But really, y'all should do it because you want to support the work that we're doing and for no other reason. Or, well, I guess other reasons are fine. But that's really what we built it around. So basically, $10 a month. 4 lectures chosen by you, plus Q&A. I will build whatever y'all want me to build. And for those of you that don't have the disposable income for that or don't want to, which is totally fine, y'all do you, we will continue with our current rate of basically free mental health content on the internet. So this does not compromise anything. It's for those of y'all that want to listen to Dr. K pontificate on a number of things, okay? Now, a couple of other things. So for the first month, we are going to focus on male mental health. Now, this is really important to understand. This is not a membership for men. This is a membership for everyone in our community. And we try really hard to make content as inclusive and as applicable as possible. At the same time, when we poll our community, the most common topic that we sort of get that we have not done is actually like male mental health. So specific stuff on male mental health. The reason that we're doing this in the first month is because the voting has not opened yet. So we sort of informally polled the community. We picked one thing so that you know what you're getting in the first month. But it is not our goal to have this membership be exclusively for men. And in fact, we encourage everyone who's not interested in male mental health to go ahead and join anyway so that you tell us what to build. And if y'all tell me, hey, Dr. K, now that you've done male mental health, we want you to do a lecture on autism and computer developers, and are programmers more likely to be autistic? What do you do if you're autistic and you're a programmer and you're having trouble? Y'all basically get to decide. So we want everyone who wants to join, and then y'all will steer what this membership becomes and who it's for. Okay. So the 4 lectures we're going to do this month, because we needed to prep them ahead of time, right? So it like takes a while. So we don't want to like start the membership. And then, by the way, the first lecture is in 2 days. Okay. We didn't want to start the membership and have y'all be like, hey, this month you can join our memberships and you get the ability to vote for what happens 30 days from now. So we wanted right out of the gate to give y'all something that is high value. So our 4 lectures are going to be a little bit scary. Number 1 is privilege and expectation. So how can we understand men, privilege, and the expectations that we put on men? So this may be a slightly more charged topic, which is totally fine. So that's what we're going to kind of do sometimes in memberships. Y'all tell me if you want me to talk about something controversial, I'll talk about something that's controversial. So we're going to talk a little bit about really understanding some of the science and sort of clinical perspective around like, what does it mean to be privileged? What are the expectations that we place on men? And somewhere once we sort of dig into that, we will discover some really scary things that men struggle with. So that lecture is going to be about how to manage and deal with expectations of being a man. So if you're a man as well as a woman or anyone else, you're going to have a set of expectations. The challenge is that as men, the expectations that are placed on us are increasingly harder to meet, right? So for example, if you look at women, I think last time I checked, more than 50% of women in heteronormative relationships want their partner to make more money than they do. The problem though is that as there's equality that's developing in the workforce, more than 50% of college students are women now. This is an expectation that is becoming increasingly difficult to meet. So how do you navigate a world as a man when that expects a lot of you, but the world is not set up for you to meet them? So our expectations are somewhat outdated. So there's going to be a lot about that. Second thing that we're going to talk about, second lecture, is going to be emotions for men. So this is where, I know it sounds kind of weird, but we did a video which kind of went viral about why therapy sucks for men. I know that that's weird because here I am, a psychiatrist, talking about it, but that's what I've observed. So there's a lot of actually biases in what we assume to be objective about emotions. And a lot of even the language that we use for emotions is actually biased, in my opinion, a little bit towards women. And this is not like women's fault or anything like that. This is just if you look at the 70% of patients historically are women, 70% of therapists are women. A lot of the research that we've done is not basically specifically on men. And so as a result, like men have a different way that they deal with their emotions. So understanding your experience of emotions is different. How you manage emotions is different. There's some really interesting biology we'll talk about a little bit today. Lecture number 3 is going to be healthy masculinity. So understanding toxic and healthy masculinity. Where does toxic masculinity come from? Where does healthy masculinity come from? How do you transition from one to the other? Last thing that we're going to talk about is male perspectives on depression. So as we're going to touch on that today, actually. So we've got a couple posts about it, but there's going to be a whole lecture on why depression is different in men. Okay. And it's very different. So, wait, it's not pre-recorded? No, dude, we're going live, baby. It's live. Okay. Yeah, so membership VODs will be available. Absolutely. So here's the thing to understand. Here's why I want to do this. For those of y'all that become members, I want y'all to watch all the lectures, or at least be familiar with them. And the reason that I want y'all to watch all the lectures is so that next month, I can assume that y'all have watched everything in the past. And therefore, I can build on stuff, okay? So for example, if y'all want to do a deep dive into meditation, or y'all want to do one lecture a month that is like kind of sequential for like 8 weeks of Dr. K teaches fundamentals of meditation, we can do that, right? That's really the goal, is that frankly, I enjoy it, but I hate to say that I'm tired that basically since I started streaming, I've only gotten to share about 15% of like what I know and what I truly want to share and what I think y'all need. And the reason for that is because like everyone has to know the 15% before we go to like 30% or 45% or 60% or whatever. And we tried to do that with a workshop, which was fantastic. So like We did a workshop on trauma, which had 200 spots that sold out in 24 hours. And 96% of the people in the workshop said that they would sign up for another one at the end of the workshop. So that went fantastic. The problem is, like, it just doesn't scale. So we're still planning on doing more workshops and stuff like that. We got to figure out what to do about that, because the workshop was great. It was really, I mean, that's not me saying this. I loved it. I loved teaching it. And towards the end, we got like really off the rails in a really good way about the nature of what we are as human beings. And I think some people got it, which is great. So, yes, 15%. Look, y'all got to understand this, okay? I'm going to just take this. All right. So this is just like 5 of the books, okay? I've got like 300 books in my room. And like, we haven't even touched Geranda Samhita. Right? Geranda Samhita is a sect on, I mean, is an exploration of spirituality that we haven't even touched. We've touched this one. I've taught about 15 to 20% of this one. And what else is good? Yeah, yogic management of asthma and diabetes. We haven't really done that. You guys have gotten a good chunk of this one. This is a book about some of the meditations that I teach are from there. But that's the thing, like, we're just getting started. And so, like, I can make a guide once a year, but like that takes a lot. And the problem is that, like, if you need something now, so here's what's going on. We've been working on a guide, right? This is what's bizarre. So we started this shit like 8 months ago. And then we're going to like film, hopefully sometime in, fingers crossed, knock on wood, January. And then like the problem is, like, y'all are struggling now. Like, hell, the whole reason that I started streaming was because people can't wait. Y'all get that? Like, society is getting screwed today. So when I was like, I got 2 really fantastic job offers from 2 amazing human beings, just really awesome mentors. And they were like, in 10 years, like, you'll be the expert. And I'm like, great. You can get this funding. You can get this grant for like $5 million. And then we can apply for this grant. And then like, you can do this and you can do this. And I was like, bruh, people are on the struggle bus like today. Like, I don't know that people can wait. Right? And so, like, there's more to learn, y'all. There's so much more to learn. And I want to teach it to you. Like, this is the thing. I realized a couple years ago that I'm mortal. And this is a weird realization. And so what I realized is, like, okay, so if I'm mortal, like, we got to get this show on the road. We've been doing this for 4 years. And we got to like 10% within year 1, and then maybe an additional 5% in the last 3 years. And so we got to, like, y'all, there's just, it's liberating how much, dude, there's so much good stuff to understand. Stuff about your body, stuff about your brain, stuff about your mind, stuff about the nature of happiness, karma, understanding your karma, how to develop a healthy sense of identity. There's just so much stuff out there. And like, you know, as much as I love YouTube, and it's great, like, I love being able to stream this with y'all, we're going to cover a lot of good stuff. There's a lot of great work that we're doing, and it is insufficient. So for those of y'all that want more in depth, and want like opportunities for Q&A and things like that, for y'all to direct our content as a community, that's what I'm excited about. Dr. K is lit starting a stealth college program at a snail's pace. Yes, you're damn right I am. So here's the thing. This isn't like college, though. This is stuff that everyone should be learning. Okay? There's a fascinating study that the state of New York, I think New York Department of Education did, about teaching kids social and emotional skills. And when they teach it formally as a class, like, it's worth 11 points in terms of grades. You know, all that crap when you've got a group project and you're like, oh my God, I have to find a partner. And then since you're not socially adept, like, you don't have first choice and no one asks you, so you end up like with the dregs because, hey, you're the dregs too, right? And then what happens is you end up with someone who's mentally checked out, more mentally checked out than you are. And this is what happens in a group project. When you're one of the bottom people in the group project that doesn't have all these people that you're already working with, what happens is there's a very quick assessment, right? I know this because I've done this, where it's you and the other 2 people that don't have group members. What y'all quickly do is assess which one of us is the most degenerate, which one is the least degenerate. And the 2 people who are more degenerate will turn to the person who is the least degenerate, and then that person becomes the leader. And if you're the leader, then you're responsible for everything, and then you're fucking lazy to begin with. But then what happens is you got to wrangle these other two noobs who are even lazier than you are. And so then what happened is the New York, I think, Department of Education was like, hey, let's teach people how to socialize. When they did that, group projects, I imagine, became way better. Right? And now here we are, a bunch of rejects who never got picked for group projects. And we are a force on the internet. Let's go. But we're gonna teach y'all ourselves, maybe I need to learn it too, how to be like better at life. Am I right? And the only difference between me and you is I'm the least degenerate here. Maybe I'm sure there's actually people who are less degenerate than I am. But I'm the one who's taking the lead because all y'all are just looking at me and be like, okay, this guy's the least degenerate. So I'm like, okay. And the only reason I'm the least degenerate is probably because of age. But it's crazy. So I did a talk recently a couple weeks ago, and this was at a place that is quite famous that a lot of hardworking people end up at, and I was amazed by like how awesome our community is. Like I view our community as a bunch of degenerates, but we're not really. Like we're actually pretty fucking epic. And so I'm just continuously impressed by people who are just knocking it out of the park. Yeah. It's because of Harvard? I don't think so, to be honest. See, here's the thing about Harvard. You don't become a Chad at Harvard. They only select Chads to begin with. That's their angle. No, I don't feel bad for brag. I'm just humbled by, seriously, like how amazing some people in our community are. I got asked to like review someone's personal statement, and I was looking at their resume, and they're like more qualified than I am. And I was like, all right, I guess you're applying to med school, but you're more successful than I am in terms of like publications. It's awesome. It's great. Please talk about the first stream. It's on Wednesday. Yeah, so we're starting this on Wednesday. So Wednesday, we're going to dive into privilege and expectation as a man. So what does it mean to be privileged? How do you deal with all the expectations that life puts on you? We're starting Wednesday. Like the lecture's ready to go, chat. Okay. Ash, welcome to live stream. Let's give Ash a good experience. What's the difference between the two tiers? So both tiers get all the content, basically. The second tier is for two specific things. First, the second tier is if you want to give us more money. You can just give us more money. That's what the second tier is for. But we were it was really important to us to not try to gatekeep the really high value stuff behind a paywall of $5 additional. So we try to give the stuff at the base tier, and the second tier, you get access to some beta tools and things like Right in the Fields, which is a community event. So our like online tools and stuff, you'll get access to that. But it's basically if y'all support the work that we do, we're giving you the option. If y'all have extra disposable income of $5 a month, you can give it to us. And I hope that's okay to be transparent about that. Like that's what the tier is for. And we haven't done things like, we don't usually do things like subathons and Patreon and stuff like that. Maybe we'll do it one day. I don't know. But we've held back on people giving us money, and that changes. It'll be recorded. Yeah. Okay. Why are we all depressed? Let's talk about it. Yeah, but the value, the values at the base tier. Okay. Let's look at posts. All right. The way people talk about men, it makes me feel like very few men are considered attractive. The general idea from the most blue-pilled people online is that if you have a good personality and click with someone, you can find a good relationship. Over time, you might become attractive to someone because of your personality. Okay, but what about the physical part, the raw sexual part? Are men not attractive visually at first? It seems like men are expected to become attractive over time, despite their looks, not because of them in part. Obviously, it's not all looks. Everyone wants to be liked by their personality as well. I'm sorry, but I am a very sexual, very physical and visual. I want to be a really attractive guy physically. I understand people have different opinions on what is beautiful or not, but I'm sorry I don't accept this extremely pessimistic view people here have about men. I'm confused about what's the pessimistic view. I'm confused. Anyway, so very few men are considered attractive. So let's understand this. So, are very few men attractive? So let's understand a couple of things. The first is that from a very young age, okay, so I'm going to make some general statements about genders. This is not meant to be discriminatory. We can just look at research, okay, about how men and women are raised differently. And from a young age, women are conditioned to be careful about their appearance. So from a very young age, right? So it's not, how does this conditioning happen? If you look at society, women are more likely to wear makeup than men. Women are more likely to get their nails painted than men. This is changing now, but this is basically historically how society has been. So imagine that you're a 2-year-old girl versus a 2-year-old boy, and you have a daddy and you have a mommy. And mommy starts getting ready for something an hour ahead of time and does makeup and gets her nails done and things like that, right? This happens in my own household. And so if you're a young woman, if you're a girl growing up, what do you get conditioned towards? You get conditioned towards your appearance is very important. And that appearance is something that you should devote a lot of time and craftsmanship, has a whole set of like accessories that you need to learn to use at some point. When it comes to men in appearance, we are not conditioned to take care for our appearance. Hell, when I was growing up, I was like ready to start shaving. So people started making fun of me at school, but like my dad never took me aside and was like, hey, it's time to start shaving. And so I remember I talked to my dad and I was like, hey, Dad, like, I think I should start shaving. And he's like, okay, go for it. And I was like, are you going to, I didn't ask, but he was like, you know, here's the stuff, go shave. And I was like, are you going to teach me? And he's like, no, if you run into any trouble, just like, let me know. I'm here in the other room. And like, I'll help you if you run into trouble. And I was like, all right. All right. So that was my upbringing. But I think a lot of men are like, I wasn't taught how to style my hair. I wasn't taught how to shop. I wasn't taught how to do anything really when it comes to personal appearance. And so if we look at like, you know, why are men unattractive? I think the biggest difference between men and women is that women actually like give a shit about their appearance and they get taught and or learn how to take care of their appearance. So that's the first thing, is like as dudes, like we just don't get taught this stuff. And now there's like all this different kind of, you know, male, like it started with metrosexuals where it's like dudes started taking care about their appearance. I think it's a good thing. You know, traditionally we've been into exercise as men, but we don't really like care too much about how we style our hair or like whatever. I mean, some people do, right? We've got barbershops and stuff like that, but men just don't take as much care about their appearance. Second thing is that I think that what people consider attractive is highly variable. And I don't know the data on this, but you know, a lot of the women that I've worked with and patients of mine and men tend to look for different things that I've seen. So this isn't like well researched, right? So I'm hesitant to make generalizations, but I think oftentimes what we consider attractive as men is different from what women consider attractive. So men and women just have different preferences when it comes to attraction. So sometimes women are looking for someone who's a little bit more caring or has a particular kind of personality or whatever. Maybe just the bar is lower in terms of physical appearance for men. It's hard to say. But I think the biggest thing to consider as to why men are oftentimes not attractive, I think there are a couple things. One is that we're not conditioned to it. I think a second thing that tends to happen with men is that people don't compliment men's appearances very often. So men don't compliment men's appearances, right? So I grew up in a time where any kind of positive affection or even comment in the physical realm about another dude labeled one as homosexual. So I grew up in a highly homophobic environment. And so we were like taught not to ever say anything nice. Heaven forbid you say that a dude looks attractive. Like, oh my God, that means that you're gay. Oh my God, we can't have that. And so I think the other thing that tends to happen is that men don't get compliments, so we don't feel attractive. And if we never get positive reinforcement, we're not going to go out of our way to look attractive. And part of the reason that we never get compliments is it's not just women's fault or other men's fault. It's because frequently we as men get confused when someone compliments us. Because we as men sometimes get confused. This person is complimenting my appearance. When I compliment someone's appearance, that means that I'm attracted to them and want to sleep with them. So if they are complimenting my appearance, that means that they must want to sleep with me. So a lot of women that I've talked to get into big trouble by trying to offer even simple kindness towards men, because that gets interpreted in a weird way. On the flip side, a lot of the men that I work with who get complimented, they are just so starved for any iota of affection or attention that even a tiny bit of kindness fills them up with all of these different feelings that they don't know how to handle. And when you kind of put this together, it becomes hard to compliment men. We as men don't do it to each other. We feel kind of weird. Like, is this guy hitting on me if he says that my hair looks good? Like, oh my God. And if a woman says something nice to us, oftentimes they tried that a little while. And then, once they complimented the wrong person, they got a dick pic. And then even if it's only like 10% of the time, but like if you're nice to 10 people and one of them sends you a dick pic, that's only going to need to happen once or twice before you learn your lesson. And the worst case scenario is we get people who are like stalkers and like don't know how to take no for an answer and all this kind of stuff. So it's challenging. I think it's challenging on both sides. I'm not blaming men and I'm not blaming women. The truth of the matter is that it's hard for men to be attractive because it's hard for us to get compliments. It's hard for us to give compliments. We're not taught about our appearance. And it can be embarrassing, right? As a dude, like it's so embarrassing to start focusing on your appearance. You feel like an idiot. Like, what are you going to do? Like walk into a Sephora and buy something? Like, it's so hard. So I think it's common for men to feel unattractive. And then I think the other thing is we do have this whole idea of like, oh, like relationships are more than just looks, which I think is true. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think that, I think it's very common for men to not feel attractive and for us to not put in a whole lot of effort into our appearance. I mean, hell, like this is a t-shirt from Amazon and this is, I don't know what, but I've had this for like 5 years. I woke up, I shaved, kind of sort of did my hair a little bit, but that's the end of it. Brushed my teeth, right? We don't spend a whole lot of time on it. Questions? Okay. So there's a great question here. Hey there, Dr. K, I just have a question for maybe a later talk. As a child growing up, I was the only boy in the house and was always told that I'm the man of the house, so I need to do this or that. So that's what our first lecture in 2 days is about. Managing expectations as a man. So oftentimes what happens, so I once had a patient who was, I think, 19 years old and was in jail. And I asked the patient, how'd you end up here? And they were in jail for like their nth possession charge with intent to distribute because they sold drugs for a living. And I asked them, how did you get into selling drugs? And so they said that when they were about 12 years old, they were in a household with their 2 sisters and their mom, and their dad left. And so what happened is mom and 2 sisters said, you're now the man of the house. And what a man does is provide to a 12-year-old. And so the 12-year-old was like, I don't know how to provide. And there's one way that 12-year-olds are able to provide for their family, which is actually to sell drugs. So they started selling drugs at the age of 12. And so got picked up for a couple of juvie possessions over the course of, 5 or 6 years because, hey, when you're 12, you suck at selling drugs. And it's not like there's an older mentor who has your best interests at heart who's teaching you. And then finally they got picked up when they, at some point, past the age of 18, and then they're no longer protected by being a juvenile. So they wind up in jail. So how do you navigate these kinds of challenges of being a man? Like, what do you do, right? When people say you're a man and a man's job is XYZ, how do you figure out if that's right or wrong? Because I don't think that they're always wrong. And that story, by the way, is not an attempt to demonize women. Just FYI. It's just that was that particular circumstance. I have plenty of stories where dudes are the bad guys. Okay? So it's not like this we got to be careful about on the internet. But that's what happens. Is a lot of times. So here's the TLDR. So we're doing a whole hour-long lecture on it, okay? But here's the TLDR. So when someone places expectations upon you as a man, true of women too, if you live your life to satisfy the expectations of others, you will not be in control of your life. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not placing a value judgment on it. I'm being a little bit scientific about it. Let's just understand. So if I'm a man and my job, everyone turns to me and says, Dr. K, as a man, you need to do this to be a man. And if I'm living my life to make them happy, I lose control. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying that I lose control. Because now suddenly they're the ones that are telling me what the targets I need to hit are. Same is true for women, by the way, too. We just expect different things of women. When are you going to have babies? Are you having babies yet? When are you going to have babies? Are you not a mother? Oh, the joy of being a mother is something that you'll never experience in life. Like, I want to have babies. I want you to have babies. Right? Dudes are happy to want to be dads because they don't have to be pregnant. Right? And so the key thing to understand is that when society places certain expectations on you, whether you're a man or a woman, you have to decide which of those expectations you want to internalize. Because if you try to just do what a man is supposed to do or what a woman is supposed to do, then you'll lose control of your life. Because you're playing somebody else's game. And so how does one go about doing that? That's what we're going to talk about on Wednesday. Right? And the real tragedy here is that as we try to live up to others' expectations, we lose control of our own life. Sometimes you can never make other people happy, right? Because everyone is all for you doing something without them working, right? So getting pregnant is a good example of this, but they're like, a man provides. Well, what does that mean about our relationship? That means I stay home. You go out there and work. So everyone is very willing to sign you up to do stuff. And what's happened in today's society is that when people sign you up to do stuff, they've come up with a beautiful set of wrapping paper, right? So we wrap this shit sandwich up in this beautiful wrapping paper of masculinity. And we say, hey, if you're a man, if you want to be a good man, if you want to be a high value man, if you want to be this kind of man, if you want to be a real man, then you make this sacrifice. It's a shit sandwich wrapped in something beautiful. And so what ends up happening, and we'll get to this in a little bit, maybe we can jump to it now, is that men are kind of stuck in this situation, which is one of the reasons why we have so high suicide rates, which we can talk about. What is this lecture you keep mentioning? Okay, so I'll explain. See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. So when you're a live streamer, you got to answer the same questions over and over and over again. No offense to anyone who's just joining. It's great that y'all joined, but we're launching YouTube memberships. Here's the 30-second bit. So reason we're launching memberships is to offer more in-depth lectures plus Q&A every month. This is in addition to our normal content, which will continue. We'll continue that. So for $10 a month, we're going to do 4 lectures that are 1 hour long. So more in-depth, more applicable. They can even be things like skills workshops if that's what y'all want. So like Dr. K, we want to learn in-depth meditation, whatever. The cool thing about the lectures is y'all decide. So members vote every month about what the next 4 lectures are going to be. And we're going to take the topics that you want us to teach about. I'm going to spend 6 to 8 hours preparing a lecture plus Q&A on topics of your choice. They're going to be more advanced and in-depth. So more science, more application, more nuance. Not a 20-minute YouTube video. For $10 a month. $15 a month if you want to give us additional money and get access to beta features. Everyone gets badges and stuff like that, like supporter kind of stuff. That's what we're offering. Okay? Women and men both have their own struggles. And what I would love is so the first month we're going to focus on male mental health just because we already polled the community and that's what floated to the top. But I would love to do a month on women's mental health or any number of other topics, whatever y'all decide. So the only reason we're launching with this is because we didn't want to launch and then have y'all vote and then like wait a month to put together stuff. Okay. Hey, as a girlfriend, I have a question. I understand that expectations play a big part in why men feel bad about themselves, but can't feeling bad about yourself give less motivation to get better? What a great question. So let's understand this, okay? We're also going to cover this in a lecture, but so let's understand what the impact of feeling bad about yourself is. So all of our brains are wired to experience negative emotions, things like shame, guilt, fear. So if you sort of think about it, why do we feel ashamed? Like, what's the purpose of that? So shame is a powerful emotion. Some psychologists even call shame the master emotion, because shame is the emotion that we tend to avoid the most in life, right? We will structure our whole lives around avoiding feeling shame. It controls us, even if we don't feel it. Trying not to feel it controls our life. So now the tricky thing about emotions is if you look at the brain, emotions in some decent quantity will actually motivate positive behavior. So the reason that we feel shame is to encourage the right kind of behavior, right? So back when we were tribes of 300 people, if we didn't do something right, if we stole, let's say from somebody else, the whole tribe of 300 shames us. And when they shame us, shame, we're never going to steal again. That's the purpose of shame. Now, the problem is that when shame becomes so powerful, it actually induces a lack of motivation, which is normally what shame is supposed to do. So the first thing that happens when we feel shame is we want to lay low. So it is protective for shame to isolate us. Because when everyone's mad at us, we don't want to be noticed. We want to disappear from the world, right? So we're a little bit quieter. We don't talk. We don't defend ourselves. We retreat. And if we think about it from an adaptive perspective, if we retreat and we're kind of like out of the public eye in our tribe, they're going to end up getting pissed at someone else, and then we can resurface. So shame is isolating as an adaptation. Now, the problem in modern society is that we get screwed by shame in a couple of ways. The first is if we continuously feel shame, we will continuously be isolated. And now we run into the real problem is that shame is triggered by all kinds of things that it was never designed to be triggered by. Shame is supposed to be triggered by other human beings. But today, it is triggered by 1,000 things that are not other human beings. The internet is not a human being. Social media is not a human being. This is what's so tricky, is that now in our current environment, we get overwhelmed by shame because it's triggered by all of these proxy human beings, like people posting on social media. And then the second problem is as we get bombarded by shame over and over and over and over again on a daily basis, it causes us to isolate. And then the last problem is, remember, shame is supposed to correct our behavior in the right way. The problem is that on the internet, we see versions of correction that are impossible. Now, what does that mean? So if I feel ashamed by the way that I look and I'm with my tribe of 300 people and we have a swimming contest, there's one person out there who is the most swole of them all, but it's like a sample size of 300. That includes kids and the elderly. But nowadays, when I look on social media, there's someone who's a professional bodybuilder or professional influencer who spends 3 hours a day on their appearance. That is not something we can actually correct towards. So this is the other problem with shame. When we feel ashamed by something on the internet, our brain cannot see a path to actually achieve that. And then we feel paralyzed because on the one hand, we feel this is what I should become. And on the other hand, we look at this person, we say, this is impossible for me. So then what do I end up doing? Absolutely nothing. So what's happened is shame has stopped fulfilling its core purpose and instead has become something that is crippling for us. Does that make sense? Why does shame arise when other people are not shaming us? Because of what it's triggered by, right? So shame is triggered by a gap in where you are and where you think you should be. That is literally what shame is. Okay? I should be here. I am here. Boom, shame. And now, even without people, all you have to do is see other people doing the stuff that you want to do, and that'll trigger shame because it notices a gap. And what do? If you really pay attention, this is what you'll discover. Anytime you experience shame, you are going to be making a comparison. Wow, look at this person is this way, but I am this way. And we have people out there whose job it is to be the best version of a particular thing. That's literally their job. If you're like an influencer, right? Like a fitness influencer or a wellness influencer. And part of the model is make you feel ashamed of yourself. And this is what advertisers have figured out. The more shame they can create in you, the more you're going to spend money. Right? Oh, you feel sad about the way that your hair is? Buy this product and your hair will look better. Oh, how to use shame and turn it into something positive like alchemy. We have a couple of videos about that. I don't know exactly where they are, but they're on YouTube. I think we've got some on shame for sure. And we're going to cover more on that. There's a lecture on emotions, 101 for men. Definitely going to talk a lot about shame, as well as the depression lecture is going to be a lot about shame. All right, but we've got other stuff. Oh my God. My God. Okay. Ooh, this is a good one. Okay, let's talk about this. Oop. All right, next up. Why is depression and anxiety more common in women, but suicide rates are higher for men? Okay, so let's understand something about suicide, okay? By the way, the other reason that we're doing some of these lectures is that some of the topics that we want to cover will get, at a minimum, demonetized and sometimes delisted on YouTube because they relate to like suicide. So you can't like make a video on, it's very hard to make videos on suicide and mental health on YouTube. It's not YouTube's fault, for the record. They're just trying to protect their populace, and there's this weird virality with suicidal content that then people will actually start killing themselves, and it's a whole mess. But one of the reasons is we want to just get free from some of those constraints. But let's talk about why is depression and anxiety higher in women, but suicides are higher in men. So let's understand a couple things about statistics. The first is suicide attempts are much more likely in women. Completed suicides are much more likely in men. I want to say that attempted suicide is 3 to 4 times as common in women than it is in men. And completed suicide is about 4 times as common in men than it is in women. So women try to commit suicide more. Men actually succeed at committing suicide more. Now, the question is, why is this? So there are a number of different hypotheses, and these are the ones that I kind of put my money in. The first is that women are more likely to engage in what we call suicidal gestures. So, for example, borderline personality disorder is more likely to be diagnosed in women, and women who have BPD are more likely to engage in suicidal behavior. So, for example, cutting or something like that, which isn't actually suicidal, but from the outside, we're not really sure what that is. It freaks people out. We call 911. They go to the emergency room, which is absolutely the right thing to do, given the situation. And then this sort of gets logged as a suicide attempt. So sometimes there is suicidal behavior or self-injurious behavior, which is more common. The second thing that tends to happen has to do with the means. So women are more likely to attempt suicide with non-lethal means. Now you may say, Dr. K, what does that mean, non-lethal means? What the hell does that mean? Non-lethal suicide. That means is things like overdosing on pills. So overdosing on pills is something that we can save someone from. We can pump your stomach, get the medication out there. You can get hospitalized in the ICU, and we can ride you through an overdose. So we're more capable of saving lives based on the poison of choice for women, basically. The second thing is that women are much more likely to communicate when they are attempting suicide. That one I don't have a clear reference for, but that's something that I has been my experience. So they'll do something like, I'll take a bunch of pills and then I will text someone and I'll say goodbye. And then what happens is that gives the other person an opportunity to alert mental health support and call emergency services, and we're able to save a life. So these are one of the reasons why I think women are more likely to attempt suicide and survive it as opposed to men. So men tend to be a lot more crafty. When they decide to kill themselves, their heart is really in it. They will calculate a lot more, and they will choose means that are harder to recover from, like things like gunshots. So it's like hard to survive if you shoot yourself. I think there's more to the equation though, because part of the problem is that our system of diagnosis will catch women who are quote unquote mentally ill better than it will catch men. And oftentimes what happens is that men who are quote unquote mentally ill don't look like they have mental illness because our definitions of mental illness are not male centric. They're actually female centric. And this is not me just saying this. So like, this is a great paper. Hypothesis of gender differences in self-reporting symptoms of depression. Implication to solve underdiagnosis and undertreatment of depressions in males. So we know this. Gender differences in a cohort of major depressive patients. Further evidence for the male depression syndrome hypothesis. So there is actually a lot of research that suggests that the way that we diagnose mental illness is not based on men. That men experience mental illnesses in different ways, and we all oftentimes get misdiagnosed or not diagnosed at all, which is why up to 50% of men who kill themselves have no history of mental illness. Now, this could mean that they have an undiagnosed mental illness, or, which I think is shockingly true much of the time, is that men who try to commit suicide were not mentally ill in the first place, which I know sounds crazy, but this has been studied in the literature as well. This is not people who are mentally ill. They decide in their right mind that suicide is the only option for them. So, which is crazy, but sometimes people decide to do that. I think we do ourselves as a disservice as society when we assume that all people who are suicidal are mentally ill. Because sometimes people are suicidal because their life is objectively so bad that they no longer want to live it. They have an accurate representation of how harsh their life is. And for us to assume that this person is mentally ill and they're not thinking right, and the problem is up here instead of the circumstances that drive them to suicide, I think we're doing a huge disservice to people. That being said, I think that if you are suicidal, you should absolutely go see a mental health professional or call 911 if you're in danger right now. And that's because I think our job as therapists is to help you no matter what, right? And sometimes, like what I'm really proud of is we as therapists and psychiatrists, if it's pathological, we will try to help that. And it can be really useful for you to understand, okay, I'm not mentally ill. My life genuinely sucks. And the good news is that there are professions like therapists that can help you rebuild your life, even if it sucks. So we can help you manage some of the internal stuff so that you can go out there and make a change for yourself. So TLDR, women are more likely to be diagnosed with particular illnesses. Our system of diagnoses is more geared towards women. And there's data. I'm not saying that because I'm like, oh my God, women are evil. No, no one's evil. No one did this intentionally. This is just when 70% of the population that you deal with is of a particular demographic, your system of diagnosis is going to be biased towards that demographic. This is just science. It's not discrimination, right? So the other thing we need to understand is that it is possible for there to be a bias without discrimination, in my opinion. No one intentionally was like, fuck men. No, they didn't do that. We were like, okay, let's ask 100 patients who suffer from depression, what is the most predominant thing that you experience? And people will say, I am sad. And 70% of people say I'm sad. 30% of people don't. And then what we're going to do as scientists, we're going to say, okay, sadness is the most common thing. Does that make sense? Okay. What would you say about people who want to get therapy but don't because they're scared of the price? What a great question. All right. So if you want to get therapy and you're scared of the price, there are a couple things that you need to understand. The first thing is that when you don't want to do something, your mind is happy to construct reasons to not do it. And price is a really good one, right? Because if you're not doing something because it's too expensive, then you're being economical. It's a positive to not go to therapy. But deep down, if you're scared of therapy for some reason, you've got to be super careful about how wise the excuse that you have is, right? Because who on earth can argue with you about price? If people are like, no, man, you should go. And you're like, well, that's easy for you to say. You've got more money than I do. But I have a very real economic constraint that prevents me from going to therapy. Therefore, you cannot blame me for my choice. So be careful. Second thing to understand, therapy is expensive and is out of reach for many people. That is a real tragedy in today's world. It's part of the reason that I'm here speaking with you today, not as a substitute for therapy, but we're going to do whatever we can for free. Second thing to understand is that therapy is oftentimes the best investment that many people will make. I can't attach a statistic. I can't say it's the best investment for 51% of people. I can't say that. Many people that I've talked to that have found therapy to be an absolute waste of time and money. Now, I think that depends on the therapist that you see and also the work that you put in. But it's oftentimes the best investment that my patients have told me this. It's the best money that they've ever spent. Because the thing about therapy is that it helps you live the rest of your life way better, right? It helps you perform better at work, helps you perform better in your relationships. It helps you walk around the house and have a healthier space up here. Because what therapy fixes is that which you carry around to everywhere you go. It is the global buff. To improve yourself will improve every dimension of your life. And the third thing that I would say, if you are scared about the price, is that I remind you that how much you get out of therapy depends on you. Just like a gym membership, the value of what you paid for access to the gym depends on how you use it. So if you're right on the fence and it's financially difficult for you to pay for therapy, I would encourage you to try to really get the most out of it and hold your therapist accountable. My recommendation is that you see 3 therapists within 1 month, 3 separate therapists within 1 month, and pick the one that's the best. Pick the one that you like the most. There's a big mistake that people will make. They'll spend 8, 12, 15, 20, 30, 50 weeks with a therapist before realizing, hey, this isn't working, or I'm not getting much out of this. So a big mistake that people make is that if they go to therapy and they're not getting something out of it, they assume that if they just keep kind of hanging out, eventually they'll get something. And there's some truth to that. Not every problem is fixed right away. And there are breakthroughs in therapy that will happen like in a couple months that you didn't foresee happening. So there's value to sticking it out. But I've seen way too many people waste way too much time in therapy to where it's not worth it. And it is the biggest waste of money in your life. So if you're scared about price, first of all, I'd make sure that that isn't an excuse to avoid therapy. Secondly, it can be quite expensive. So you should really try to get your money's worth, which depends on what you put in. And finding the right therapist is a huge part of it. The last thing is that there are many things like the Open Path Collective is a good example of this. There are many therapists, myself included, who will see patients at a reduced or even free. Like there was a point where 50% of my practice was like free care. And like a lot of therapists, a lot of us are in it to try to help people. And like, we'll take a couple of sob stories who can't afford our services and we do it gladly. So ask. Just say, hey, I really want to work with you, or I'd like to give this a shot, but my financial situation isn't great. Do you have any spots for people at reduced or free care? Yeah. So someone's saying, I feel shy, ashamed to go see a therapist because I'm not a talkative person. That's okay. We're really good at getting y'all to talk. And oftentimes shy people have the easiest time talking in therapy because there's only one other person in the room and anything you say will never leave the room. So it can be liberating. The shyer you are, sometimes the easier and the more enjoyable you will find therapy. I love doing therapy with introverts. It's a lot of fun. What is better, a therapist or a coach? So let's understand the difference between the two real quick, okay? And then we're going to move on to another topic. So therapists, what is this coaching business? So coaching is like, why are we doing this? So there's a group of therapists who specialized in positive psychology. And what they sort of realized is that the techniques that we use in therapy can be used for non-therapeutic goals. So we do psychotherapy, specifically, generally speaking, nowadays to treat an illness, right? Someone has a mood disorder or an anxiety disorder. We are going to leverage our understanding of the mind to fix something that is broken. This group of positive psychologists, I think Carol Kaufman is one of them, who's at the Institute of Coaching at McLean Hospital and Harvard Medical School. So this is where I got my introduction to coaching. Realize that these same techniques can be used for someone who's not ill at all, who is baseline or even above baseline, to help them elevate what they're capable of. And that's where coaching, in my opinion, was born, is the recognition that you can take someone at baseline and you can help them achieve by using a lot of these same principles. So I think the real goal is whether are we doing this as therapy? Does it have a therapeutic goal? Is it designed to fix something that is broken, or is it designed to help you achieve? And therapists, I think all therapists can theoretically do the work of a coach, but no coaches can do the work that is exclusively a therapist's, if that makes sense. The challenge is that therapists are not oftentimes trained to work with healthy people and help them achieve. That's just not what our training is. Our training is with people who have a pathology of some kind. So it's different. And so my general question when I'm asking people, or when people ask me like, hey, which one should I see? I'd say, are you trying to fix something that's broken? Or are you, generally speaking, relatively healthy and you want to achieve more? Okay. Let's move on. All right. A study has found men view traditional symptoms of depression as more severe than other types of symptoms. And men with traditional depressive symptoms are perceived as more feminine and less masculine. This has major implications for stigma and help seeking. So our last lecture with our membership launch is going to be a male-specific focus on depression. But we're going to talk a little bit about how men experience depression differently from women. Or just in general. There's a male-specific. It's not clear whether it's women or it's just everybody else. So men do experience... Oh, okay, let's not click that button yet. Or let's click it. Restart. There we go. Okay. What was I saying? All right. So there's a lot of research that shows that men experience depression differently from what we sort of think about as textbook depression. This is one of the reasons why men are less likely to be diagnosed with depression than women. I think on the inside, there is something very similar going on, but the way that this is expressed on the outside is different. For example, so doing a lot of work as an addiction psychiatrist, one of the key things that I've sort of discovered is that a lot of addiction in men is actually a manifestation of depression. Now, this becomes a little bit complicated because once you start using a substance to self-medicate your depression, we'll talk about what that is in a second. What then that creates is a separate diagnosis, which is a substance use dependence. Now I become dependent on the substance and I have a separate thing going on that is an addiction that has its own life, right? But if we look at why I got addicted in the first place, oftentimes it is depression at the root. So here are a couple of things that people don't understand about how depression can manifest in men that looks very different from women. So if we look at diagnostic criteria for major depressive disorder, a big part of it is feeling sad. So it's like there's 5 out of these 9 things, like sleep disturbance, anhedonia, which means inability to enjoy things, feeling guilty, having lower energy. All this kind of crap is there for the diagnostic criteria of major depressive disorder. But the main thing that everyone basically has to have is you have to feel sad for about 2 weeks. Now, this is a huge problem for men because a lot of men who are depressed don't actually feel sad. What we will feel is frustrated, angry, out of control. So the experience of men doesn't involve a whole lot of sadness or crying or isolation. And in fact, the paper that we just looked at demonstrated that when a man experiences those things, when I'm isolated, crying, and feeling sad, I view myself as weak or feminine. I don't think about it as depression. I view it as weakness. So men move away from that depression on purpose. They don't endorse those symptoms. In fact, they try to self-medicate them. I'm going to drink my problems away so I don't feel like a wuss. Tired of being a wuss. So I'm going to do all this stuff instead. So then what happens if you ask this person, hey, do you feel sad? And you're like, no, I numb it. I don't feel sad. What I feel is pissed, angry, frustrated. So the male experience of depression is a little bit different. And let's take a quick look. Okay? So, a hypothesis of gender differences in self-reporting symptoms of depression. And let's look at this. Potential mechanisms that account for this difference may include 3 aspects. There's something about estrogen, but gender differences in coping style is really important. So, men are comparatively less emotionally expressive, are non-help seeking, so we're less likely to get diagnosed with depression. And there are differences in phenotype. So the way that depression looks in men is different. So these are atypical, we call them atypical symptoms of depression, but they're actually just male symptoms, right? So this in and of itself is a key thing to understand. Typical depression is not what men look like when they're depressed. We have an atypical presentation. So the whole condition is defined as in a typical way, and men are sort of atypical. Let me just show you all what a couple of examples. We don't worry about that. Okay, this is the key thing. Gender differences in the phenotypic symptoms of depression. So what does phenotype mean? Phenotype means the way it looks. Not what it is, but the way it looks. So, males, what we want to be is, so when men are depressed, we are more, or just in general, men are more likely to be proactive, aggressive, violent, whereas women are more likely to be emotional, passive, and selfless. Let me try to find, there's one good sentence in here. Or maybe it's over here. Oh yeah, no, here it is. Okay, this is the paper I'm looking for. So this is a great example. This paper looks at the specifics of male depression. So these people even suggested back in 2001 that depression in men has its own particular syndrome, has its own constellation of symptoms. So let's look at what depression looks like in men. Okay. Men displayed more comorbidities with alcohol use. So the number one sign of depression in men could be a substance use disorder. Impulse control. And this is not what I'm looking for. There we go. Okay. So more provocatively, look at that, Chad. I don't know if you guys see what I did to find what I was looking for, but I knew what year the reference was. Okay. So Rutz has postulated the existence of a specific male depression syndrome characterized by temporary low stress tolerance, acting out, aggression, low impulse control, anger attacks, abuse or abuse equivalent behavior, antisocial features, alexithymia, which is emotional numbness, depressive thought content, high suicide potential. So let me ask y'all something. Have y'all ever experienced a period of time where you were more sensitive to stress? You felt super stressed out. You felt more aggressive. You had worse impulse control. You're jerking off more, playing more video games, drinking more. You get angry. You're more likely to engage in substance use. You become more antisocial and you become more numb. This is what depression in men looks like. There's no sadness. There's no crying. There's no like leaning on other people for help. You're pissed. You're isolating. You want to stay the hell away from everybody else. Everything is falling apart. You feel out of control. You don't know what to do about it. You carry around this weight in your head, and the only thing you can do to get relief is to turn to some kind of dopaminergic activity. Alcohol, marijuana, video games, pornography. This in 2001 was described as a male syndrome of depression. But this is not what we diagnose. When someone comes in, we ask them, have you been sad? People are like, no, I'm not sad. I'm fucking stressed out and the world is falling apart and I don't know how to fix it all. I can't fix it, which is what everyone wants me to do, is fix it. But I can't. So I'm drinking more. And then we look at this person, we say, oh, wow, sounds like you've got an alcohol problem because you're not sad and crying, you're just drinking a lot. So this is what we don't understand about male depression. And this is also where, like, one of my, not mentors, teachers, Maurizio Fava, who, when I was training, was, Associate Chief of Psychiatry at MGH, also discovered a specific kind of depression with anger attacks back in 1998. Super cool. So we know that there are different manifestations of depression. The problem is that this doesn't sink in. And so men don't get diagnosed with depression. Instead, what they get diagnosed with is being an asshole man. This is toxic masculinity. He's angry, drinks a lot, doesn't discuss his emotions. It's toxic masculinity. It's toxic masculinity. And who's to blame? Right? The more compassionate versions of us will say that society is to blame. The patriarchy is to blame. Well, how do we fix that? Right? Well, I'm sure that people have good suggestions about how to dismantle it. In the worst case scenarios, we blame the person. So see, we've become so enlightened as a society, we still blame a lot of people for being depressed. We certainly do. It's sad. But now there is a subgroup of people who frequently get blamed even more because it doesn't even look like depression. We view it as toxic masculinity. Impulses, addictions. But this literally could be a manifestation of a pathology that just looks different. And so male depression is very different. This is what I've seen. And this is why I think that, like, you know, sometimes the reason that men kill themselves is because they actually exhibit depressive symptoms, but they don't get diagnosed with depression. They don't seek help. Right? And some of this stuff I think is fair to say is a piece of toxic masculinity. I think it's a fair definition. It's a fair conception in some ways, like the lack of help seeking. But then if you look at why don't men seek help, it's because we get punished for it. And I've got a paper about that too, but anyway, I'll find that for y'all. Yeah. Let me see if I can find this real quick. Anyway, so this is a good paper. I'll just flash to this. We don't have to go over it in detail. But where do I turn for help? Gender role conflict, self-stigma, and college men's help seeking for depression basically explores why men are sort of not open to seeking help. And as you examine more of this paper and this literature, what you discover is that one of the main reasons that people don't seek help is because when we seek help, we get punished for it. We're viewed as either not masculine sometimes, but frequently people just don't help us. And so we stop asking for help because it's a waste of time. It sucks that YouTube only allow leftist therapists preach. What does that mean? I'm so confused. Am I the leftist? How did politics enter this? Did politics? Because we're talking about... I'm confused. Am I leftist or am I rightist here? Can someone help me? I'm so confused. Is what I'm confused about this person's comment, because is this person saying that I'm leftist or that I'm rightist? I don't know where this puts me. I thought we were talking science. I'm uptist. Gamist. Okay. I'll be uptist. I didn't realize, like, this is the reason we're pointing to research is I don't think this is political. And maybe this is me being ignorant, because I am ignorant in a lot of ways. You know, because I spend my days reading this instead of, you know, being like understanding. Like, I don't know if I'm leftist or rightist or what. No, I genuinely want to understand where on the side of whatever I am right now. Because I'm terrified. I'm terrified of being branded as one of these ists. Because as far as I mean, I think I'm talking science. Does that make me leftist? I don't even know anymore. Okay, let's move on. I don't know what I am in terms of leftist or rightist, because every time I try to talk to someone about this, I can't find a consensus definition. I talk to some people who are leftists who think I'm a rightist, and I talk to some people who are rightists who think I'm a leftist, and then maybe that makes me a centrist. I don't know. I mean, but yeah, okay. I don't know. I'm open to being educated. Okay. All right. Let's talk about... Okay, yeah, I don't know. Chaotic neutral. Now we're talking. Let's forget about political spectrums. What alignment are you? Chat, what is your favorite alignment for characters that you play? And better question is what is the preferred alignment of characters that I play? Okay. Oh, there's a great question about being stoic. Okay, give me a second, Joe Mama. Chaotic lawful, neutral good. Yeah, so my chaotic good forever. Okay. I love it that there's D&D enjoyers. Oh my god, love y'all. All right, so to be honest, my favorite classes to play are bards, thieves, and necromancers. My favorite alignment is chaotic neutral. I like necromancy, but you know, it's generally speaking evil, but sometimes I'll play those people who like just want to understand the nature of life and death, and I'm not evil. But chaotic neutral bard. Let's go. So in real life, my alignment is probably chaotic good, because if I was lawful good, I would have stayed in academia. Right? We gotta bend the rules. We gotta do something a little bit unorthodox. Yeah, it's challenging to want to play necromancers though, because most DMs, you know, because the necromancy is sometimes to be frowned upon. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, it's to be frowned upon. I see you as neutral. I take that as a compliment, Crow. Hey, would the YouTube membership content ever have interviews? That's not something that we have planned right now, but it could. I mean, the whole point is that y'all decide what we do, right? Yeah. So a couple of comments and let's move on. Thank you guys so much for the dip into D&D. I still need to play BG3, by the way. I'm like an hour in. Oh my God, I was playing on Tactician and then I realized I moved down difficulties. This is the first time I've ever done this in life. Speaking to the person who's like 40 years old, who's Christoph Fliz. Yeah, so like as a geriatric gamer, I just found that while I could win the battles on Tactician, they were just so cognitively intensive and I had to like save and reload a bazillion times or die a bazillion times and just try again. So I was like, you know what? This is not actually fun. So I downgraded the difficulty and I felt like a real noob, but then the game felt freer. Like I didn't have to like prep for everything. You know what I mean? Like when you're playing Larian games, like if you're on the hardest difficulty and you walk in, you have to know exactly what's going to happen. Or maybe I need to. Maybe y'all can just YOLO it, but yeah. Anyway, so there was a question about stoicism, and there's a great question that I just want to get to for a second. Oh my God, it disappeared. Someone was asking about schizoid personality disorder and stoicism. I don't remember the question 100%, but you know, if you have schizoid personality disorder, you tend to be pretty withdrawn. You don't really care for social relationships. Like you don't need them. So if we look at like the schizoid personality versus kind of the dependent personality, there's a difference. So people are just like comfortable without relationships. And you know, that's exactly the kind of topic that we haven't dove too much into just because of an epidemiology issue, which is that the percentage of people who have this are quite small. And so like very, very small, exceedingly small. And so we haven't spent a whole lot of time on it, but that's the kind of thing that if you guys want us to do a lecture on, we can. Maybe, I'll explore it anyway, but okay, thank you so much, Nixogram. The acknowledgement of the existence of patriarchy is a leftist thought for some people. That's why they framed you like that, I think. Good to know. Thank y'all for educating me. Yeah, I think maybe I'll put together something on stoicism, alexithymia, and schizoid. What if members vote on basic beginner level topics and not esoteric topics for the lectures? That would be horrible. Yes, I agree. But also, we got to start somewhere. So I think over time, the voting may change. Henrik, did you miss the big announcement? I don't know, chat. Did Henrik miss the big announcement? We can do it again. So here's the announcement. So we are launching YouTube memberships. And we're launching today. And the first lecture is going to be in 2 days. So the reason we're doing memberships, couple of super quick details about it. The first is what you get with memberships. It's $10 a month. And what you get is 4 live streamed lectures, which will be available on demand afterward with Q&A. So the lectures are going to be longer. They're 1-hour lectures that are more academic, more applicable, more in depth. So this is for the subset of our community who wants more than 20-minute YouTube videos. The topics for the lectures are chosen by y'all. So you decide 1 month in advance what I'm going to build lectures on. I'll spend about 6 to 8 hours putting together a lecture. There'll be weekly quests related to the lecture. So if you guys want to like build something off of it, you can. But it's not 20-minute clickbait kind of stuff. It's like we're going to actually go into a topic in depth in a topic. The first month, we're going to focus on male mental health. And the reason for that is because we have basically been polling the community. And that's at the top of the list for stuff that we have not focused on so far. So in our general like streams and YouTube videos and stuff like that, we try to be as inclusive as possible. But when we ask people, what do you want lectures on? This is the stuff that's actually at the top. So going forward, we're not planning on making this like an exclusively male membership or anything like that. That's not the goal. We just needed somewhere to start. And we just listened to the community in terms of what they wanted. So we just did a bit about male depression. There's going to be a whole 1-hour lecture on that. We're going to talk about dealing with expectations as a man, how to develop healthy masculinity and where toxic masculinity comes from, emotions for men, how the experience of emotions is different for men, and also how we manage emotions is different for men. So learning a little bit about that. And the last lecture is going to be a male view on depression. So how is depression for men actually different from general depression? So if y'all are interested, sign up. I'm going to give an hour-long lecture, and we'll do Q&A at the end. And I think once a month, we're going to try to have standalone Q&A as well as a separate live stream. So I think 5 live streams a month. The good news is that this does not impact our general content that we make. So for those of y'all that are not in a position where you can even afford $10 a month, I'm not upset about that. If y'all are kind of in a position where you can't afford that, totally fine. We're going to continue making all the same free stuff that we normally make. And our hope is that with the money from memberships, we can continue to build other stuff. We have a second tier, which is at $15 a month, which is if you want to give us extra money. What do you get at that tier? You get maybe early access to other tools and things like that we're building. But our goal is to really create the highest value at the lowest tier. And the second tier is just a substitute for Patreon. So if you guys want to give us money and we're building something new, you get early access to it. But it's really to support the work that we're doing, because we get tons of requests from people who are wanting to give us money, and we haven't set up something yet. So that's why we do it. Okay. Do I pay to get into the lecture? You just join as a member. So each lecture, I guess technically is like $2.50 or maybe $2, because there's a Q&A section as well. Yeah, you'll be able to watch. I think you'll be able to watch it after. I don't know exactly. That depends on the YouTube functionality, but generally speaking, we plan on having VODs. Okay, Ricardo's saying, I've been diagnosed with alexithymia. You have a video on it, but it's hard to find exercises. Okay, we'll work on it. Thank you very much, Ricardo. I'm filing it away. Okay. Yeah, y'all can join. Yeah, so this is just so y'all understand, the reason we're charging for this is just because it takes time to build. And this is a group of people that we hope y'all will be able to get to advanced topics. But all of our standard like free streams and YouTube videos and stuff is going to continue. Okay. Yeah, so there should be a schedule somewhere. I think the first stream is on Wednesday, and we're doing 1 stream a week, basically. Okay. Yeah. All right, so let's move on. Okay. Give you all a choice, chat. You guys decide. So we have... Okay. Y'all tell me which one. Okay, we're going to do finding a therapist as a man is difficult, struggling with the idea of being a man, and can you ever fully recover from porn? Which one do y'all want to do? How do I become a member? I think there's a join button somewhere. Can somebody help this person out? Which one, chat? Which one are we doing? Porn. Porn. Is there a poll? Mods? Mod check? Oh my God. I did it, chat. Okay, everyone's saying 2. A lot of people are saying 2. 2 and 3, 2 and 3, 2 and 3. Okay, it looks like 1 is the least. All right, let's do 2. All right. Let's do 2. We're going to do them both. We're just trying to figure out the order. Okay? Wait, I'm seeing more people say 3. Okay. No. Oh my God. Oh, wait, is this a poll? No. Pinned. Okay. Let's do 2. Okay. And then we'll do 3 right after. Okay? 3 right after. Struggling with the idea of being a man. I 23M, recently graduated from university with a degree in computer science and found a great job which makes me money. Good money. Financial security and the ability to support my brothers and mother who is retiring soon was one of the main goals that I was working towards. I'd say that my idea of what a man is mainly a provider, someone whose duty it is to ensure the well-being of those dependent on him. For doing this, there are no pats on the back or thank yous that I expect, as I'm merely doing what is my duty as a man, as a sibling, and as a son. To be someone who I know my family can rely on gives me great pride in knowing that I can alleviate their financial struggle has become a great source of pride and fuels me to keep going. The problem I have encountered is that being in the provider role has made me emotionally numb to everything else. My constant focus is on the fact that I'm depended on by others, and I have to do everything I can to make sure they want for nothing, which has manifested as a need to climb the corporate ladder for higher pay. I don't feel much of anything nowadays. I'm not happy, I'm not sad, I'm not angry, I merely just exist and feign and manipulate my character and responses to fit the situation I am in. Romantic relationships make no sense to me at all. I see friends in long-term relationships so happy and reliant on each other for emotional and physical support. I've never had it, and I've gone long enough without it that it doesn't seem like a necessity whatsoever. Part of me views needing reassurance and emotional support from others as weakness, mostly because I made it this far without it, and I am nothing special, so why can't they? My family needing me led me to the conclusion that I would not have any children of my own, as this would split my attention and finances to both families. Everyone makes sacrifices in this life for family, so for me, this is one that I choose to make for their sake. I don't think I have the emotional capabilities to be a good father or partner to anyone, hence it's best if I stay away from starting my own family anyway. Work hard, then provide, move up the ladder, earn, and then provide even more. So, this is a all too common scenario where we are taught as men that it is our duty to provide, and women are taught to provide in a different way, right? So women are taught to provide in terms of cleaning up and cooking and entertaining and whatnot, bearing children. And men are taught that what we are is a vehicle of economic stability for the people around us. And what ends up happening is that we are taught that, okay, you're supposed to be this thing. And if you are not this thing, then you should be ashamed of yourself. And if you are this thing, you should be proud of yourself. But something really tricky happens when we take a group of people and we say that your pride is dependent on sacrifice. This creates a really challenging situation because at the end of the day, for you to feel pride, you have to give something up. You have to hurt in some way, right? Because that's what sacrifice is. Sacrifice is you take this pain for this benefit. And so oftentimes I see this a lot in men, a lot of men who are suicidal. Actually, this is exactly how they start out. They start out at the age of 23 making sacrifices for their family. And then they get bound in that sacrifice. The family becomes dependent on that sacrifice. And so now if you stop holding the world up, the world for your loved ones will fall apart. And so then they end up at the age of 40 being suicidal because they've been numb for so long that they don't know what to do. They're tired of living this life. And this is exactly what happens. Because when you start sacrificing for other people, you can feel some degree of pride in it. But every time you sacrifice, it hurts you. So as a dude, how do you manage that hurt? I have to get up every day and I have to go to my job because I need to pay the bills. But it hurts. I don't like my job. So what do I end up doing? The brain adapts by becoming numb. The brain adapts by dissociation. So literally what happens is as you start to burn out, your emotional circuitry in the brain shuts off because in the absence of it shutting off, it would hurt too much. And then what happens is all of the consequences of emotional numbness become really problematic. At the top of the list is not engaging in your own healthy relationships. Right? Because you don't have emotional bandwidth, you're numb on the inside, you don't even feel so much attraction. Or when you feel attracted to someone, it carries with it a lot of really nasty other things. You'll know what I'm talking about. It's kind of weird. Like if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's going to be hard to understand. But, I remember like when I was attracted to someone, it would bring up all kinds of stuff. I couldn't just be in love. I couldn't be attracted because anytime I had those feelings, like all this other crap would come with it. Like, am I good enough? What does this person need me to be? Can I live up to their expectations? I'm already holding all these other people's expectations. I don't think I can live up to somebody else's expectations. Or if I like this person, that's weak. Or if there's some kind of relationship here, I'm scared of it. We don't really realize that's what we feel. But the only thing that I remember feeling, and I've worked with a ton of men who have experienced this, is that the attraction in the relationship comes with all of this unsorted baggage. And since we're so numb, we're not really aware of it. We haven't really dealt with it. So then we start retreating from that. And we start creating this life where our only source of pride, because we're so numb and we don't listen to ourselves, our only source of pride is living up to expectations. And you can feel a lot of genuine pride in that. I'm not saying that, providing for your family is a bad thing. I certainly did my fair share of it, still do. I'm happy to do it. Right? So there was a point in time where my wife was in school. We had bills to pay. I had 2 young kids, so I had to spend my weekends working in a hospital. Thankfully, I was in a situation where I could work for 48 hours and make enough to be able to support, my student partner and my young kids. So that's what we do as men, right? We provide. The challenge, though, is that when this becomes our only source of pride, we almost become addicted to providing. Because if you stop providing at that point, what are you left with? Shame. You're a failure. And since you've sacrificed everything else in your life, you have nothing to fall back on. This is the trap that traps men and leads to middle-age suicides and midlife crises. Is I'm going to sacrifice everything else in my life to make these people happy. And now I only have one source of pride, joy, and positive affirmation. The problem is that source requires me to continue to sacrifice. And now I'm stuck because I'm dependent on this source of pride. And if I ever give it up, then I'm screwed because I have nothing left. I haven't built anything. I'm 40 years old. And I've sacrificed to create this family, which on some level I love, but I feel empty and numb inside. I feel unfulfilled. So let me color my hair and buy a convertible. Right? This is what happens because I've got nothing else. I've spent 20 years of my life to get to this point. And what do I have to show for it? Everybody else has security, but what do I have? Right? And this is where people are saying exploited by people. In the worst cases, yes. But this is where we tend to do something as men. We want to blame other people. But this is where you made this choice. Were you pressured? Absolutely. Were you taken advantage of? Very possibly. It's not my place to say whether you were or you weren't. But I absolutely know that early on there was some willingness to sacrifice, and then we get stuck with it. So this is the real tragedy, is we get taught that as a man, you have to sacrifice in order to feel pride. And then we get stuck sacrificing, and then we give everything up, and then our lives are empty. And then people wonder, what's wrong with men? Well, we've given up everything in our lives for this particular thing, and now our life is empty, and that's not going to lead to happiness. Having an empty life is no way to be happy. Sacrifice only gets you so far in terms of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. right? So what do we do about this? So this is where I would say, if you're a man and people are dependent on you and you feel forced to support them, not saying you don't support them, because that's going to lead to a bunch of shame. They don't know what to do, right? It's your source of pride. What I would say first and foremost is pick a timeline. Get dimensions of time. So if we look at this post, the main question that I have for all of this is when. How long are you going to be providing for your son, your mother, and your siblings? I think it's good to provide for your family. Like, that's a good thing. How long are you planning on not having a relationship? What's your timeline? Because what tends to happen, the biggest mistake men make is not in sacrifice. I don't think sacrificing is bad. It's in a never-ending sacrifice, an endless sacrifice of God knows how many years this is going to go on. So if you're supporting someone who's financially unstable, sit down with them and ask them, okay, what's the plan? Right? And then you kind of got to figure out, like, what's the timeline? This person has siblings. How are the siblings going to be self-sufficient? For what period of time are you carrying the load? And this is what tends to happen, is we make sacrifices and we never have this conversation. We never even let people know that, hey, by the way, I may not be here forever. And instead, what we actually end up doing is we start enabling dependent behavior because we never bring it up. We don't expect gratitude. And so when people start taking us for granted, instead of treating us with gratitude because we don't expect it, right? It's my duty. I'm fulfilling my duty. Therefore, other people don't have to acknowledge it, don't have to be grateful, and can assume it's always going to be there. This is how we get trapped. The worst thing you can do for someone is something that they can do for themselves. And when we start supporting everybody around us, they'll start to count on it, especially when you don't expect appreciation, which I think is fine. You don't have to expect appreciation. But just let them know that there's a timeline. Ask them, how long are you expecting, sit down with your family. Say, how long are you expecting me to financially support us? Right? Just ask. And have everyone sort of acknowledge for a moment what you are doing and what the timeline for this is. We're not saying don't do it. Second thing to do is to take some of that emotional numbness and gravitate a little bit towards something that makes you feel happy or content. You need to have some source of pride and joy in your life that comes outside of helping other people, sacrificing for other people. Because that's dangerous. That's poisonous. To feel pride from sacrifice, and then sometimes this can even become toxic. So to feel pride from sacrifice, in the worst case scenarios, results in stuff like Munchausen's by proxy. Which is when, since my only source of pride is to sacrifice for you, when you no longer need me, that means that I have to create situations that require my sacrifice. So now what I'm doing is, since I feel pride because I sacrifice for you, and you don't need me to sacrifice anymore, now what I need to do is I'm going to start a fire and I'm going to burn myself while rescuing you. I've seen it. It's scary. There's even a form of depression or depressive personality disorder called altruistic depression, which is when people feel depressed unless they are sacrificing for someone else. And so what these people end up doing, it's at the beginning, everyone's like, oh, wow, I would love to have someone like that in my life, where they feel good about themselves when they're doing something for me. That sounds great. But eventually what these people will do is they'll start creating problems to sacrifice so that they can feel better about themselves. And they go on sabotaging all their relationships. They drive people insane. Altruistic depression. It's crazy. And so this is the tricky thing. I think it's totally fine. And this, honestly, for the record, I don't think is male, right? We expect sacrifice from all human beings for your family. It just looks different. And if you're in this autopilot sacrificing mode, You need to stop and really think about how long do you want to keep this up and what are you giving up? Are you giving up romantic relationships? Are you giving up your own happiness? And this is the crazy thing, is that you don't even need to give it up. So when you sacrifice your whole life to support your family, you've got to be super careful, because what you could be doing is creating dependence. And when you create dependence, they need you to sacrifice. But if you hadn't sacrificed so much in the first place, they would have learned to become self-sufficient. This is what really feels like a chicken or egg kind of problem. So I'd strongly recommend you have conversations with the people that are dependent on you. And just try to get a sense of, okay, like, what are we doing here? Right? And then you're not going to do that, though, because it'll make them feel guilty for being dependent on you. And the last thing that you want to do is make other people feel guilty. You're welcome. You would much rather sacrifice and take all of the negative emotions yourself. And you're supporting them financially, but heaven forbid you make them feel guilty for it. We can't do that. So I'm not saying that you should go up and say, hey, you should be grateful for all the sacrifices I make for you. You can just ask them, hey, what's your plan, right? What's our plan? This is our life. We're living it together. This is what you're doing. This is what I'm doing. This is what I need help with. This is what you need help with. And how long are we going to be doing this? It's very helpful to do. Now, this is great. Someone's asking, what if you ask and the answer is to support forever? So I think that's where you get to decide, right? In the case of a parent who may not have the working potential anymore, I think it's actually okay to support someone forever. I think that's okay, right? Like, that's acceptable. But you have to decide that it's acceptable. You have to understand what you're signing up for. And then this is on the flip side, is I would still ask, if you are making a lifelong sacrifice for this person, I think it's completely reasonable for you to ask that of them. There should be reciprocity in relationships. And they don't have to support you financially, but I'm sure they could support you in other ways, right? Helping you, hey, set me up with someone. I want to start dating. Ask for help. It's okay. Right? And that's also where if they are capable of working and their answer is you support me forever, you can also say, I'm not willing to do that. Right? Or this is what this is costing me. This is the extent to which I'm willing to do it. But here's what I need from you. And if they're asking for ongoing financial support, then I think it's completely reasonable for you to ask for something else. And this is important that you don't get taken for granted. Right? It's like Gabe is saying, reciprocated altruism is an evolutionary strategy for highly social animals. It comes out on top in the long run, which I think is totally fine. I'm totally fine with a division of labor within a household where one person earns all the money and one person takes care of things at home. But I think this is a challenge, is that a lot of times we just sign up for this stuff, or we get signed up for it and we proceed on autopilot without critically thinking about what we're signing up for and what kind of behaviors we're engendering. We create dependency all around us and we never even talk about it, because even bringing it up, oh my God, this is my duty, I should do it without complaint. No, doing your duty is a good thing, but you fucking get to complain. Right? When did we surrender that? What did we get in return when we gave up the ability to complain? Like, complain if you want to. Right? Questions? Yeah, we need to negotiate. I wouldn't even call it a negotiation. I would say have a conversation. And really, like, over the course of that conversation, you will discover how you feel about it, which is really important. Complaining is healthy? It can be. So y'all have to understand something. Is complaining healthy? What a great question. First thing to understand is that if human beings do it, if the majority of human beings do it, chances are it's a feature, not a bug. So there's a reason why human beings complain. There's a reason why it's normal to complain, because to a certain extent, it is healthy. So let's understand how complaining is healthy. The first is it gives other people a chance to understand where you are. Because if you are in an unsustainable situation, it is actually beneficial for the people around you to understand that you are not happy. Because if we want to continue whatever we're doing, everyone needs to be moderately happy in order for it to be sustainable. That's number one. It's a way for you to signal to people how to maintain this relationship. Second reason is it opens the door for empathy. When I complain about my boss and you complain about your boss, we bind with each other. So we as human beings know that when we share something negative, it opens the door for support. Now, in what ways is complaining unhealthy? Because remember that complaining is supposed to have other steps, right? So I share my struggle, you share your struggle, we both bond over it, and we both feel better. This builds a relationship. Or I share something that I'm unhappy about to give you an opportunity to try to fix it. Or even complaining can be a way to articulate and work through something that you're going through internally. So to increase self-understanding by sharing something that you're complaining about, we do some back and forth. I understand it. Once I understand it, I can take steps. Now, the three things with complaining that all make them healthy have subsequent steps. Either the relationship is being worked on, we're forming a relationship by sharing a struggle, or I'm thinking through things so that I can fix them myself. When complaining becomes unhealthy is when people just stop after the complaining. Complaining is a vehicle to get from point A to point Z. When we just board the train and we stay on it forever, that is unhealthy. It fatigues other people if there's nothing being done about it. If there is no processing or forward momentum, you're kind of stuck in that negative space. You're activating all these negative emotions and you're not actually doing anything about them. And we see this a lot on the internet, where you'll have a lot of people who complain all the time, and the second that someone stops them from complaining, they will go find someone else to complain to. So they're stuck in this constant cycle of complaining without getting anywhere. And so in this case, what's happening is, remember that complaining is a tool to improve things. Does that make sense? So once I complain to you, we're going to work on something. I'll clarify something for myself now that I understand it, I can fix it. Or we're going to form a bond. We're going to form an emotional relationship. But it is a method to fix things. So then the problem is, if all you do is complain and you don't take that second step, nothing ever gets fixed. If nothing ever gets fixed, you need to complain a whole lot more. As you complain a whole lot more, you're going to start driving people away and you're going to find other people to complain to. So then what happens, we get stuck in this cycle where I'm unhappy, things aren't getting fixed, I have a ton of negative energy that I need to expel through complaining. So this is the cycle of someone who gets stuck in complaining. And this is also sometimes what happens in safe spaces, where it's like, it's just a place where, like, we've had tons of people in our community who've said, I can't handle this. This is like too messy for my mental health. Because every time I come here, it's just vomit of complaints. And our mods have done a phenomenal job of cleaning up the community and keeping it with a forward momentum. So complaining should be a step to progress. And it becomes unhealthy when that's where we end up with it. Because if we never change anything, then we keep on feeling bad and all we do is complain. And sometimes this happens in safe spaces where it's just a bunch of people complaining about stuff without actually taking steps to improve their lives. Right? So there's some amount of validation which can be very helpful, but then validation is a step to something. So that's the difference between healthy complaining and unhealthy complaining. Why does complaining about stuff we can't do anything about feel so good if complaining is only here to help us in life? What a great question. So remember that complaining is doing something, right? So complaining is all about emotional expression, which is doing something. And how is that helpful? So understand this. When a negative emotion is dominating your mind, it becomes very easy to become hopeless, to feel like you can't do anything to fix the problem. So one of the most fundamental steps when you're dealing with a negative emotion is to vent the negative emotion from your mind so that your mind can now operate clearly. And once your mind can operate clearly, you may be able to fix an unfixable problem. My favorite example of this is someone who gets dumped, who thinks that I will never date again because I am unlovable. They just need to vent that negative emotion, and then they will start to see that if they got into one relationship, chances are they can get into another. And that, generally speaking, most human beings are capable of relationships, like 99% of us. We just need to be in the right frame of mind. So complaining is absolutely an emotional step. And then once it clears our mind, hopefully we're able to do something else. Great question. Okay. All right. Let's talk about porn addiction. By the way, this stuff about struggling with the idea of being a man, this is what the two of our lectures are going to touch on this. Okay, so two of our starting lectures are going to, if y'all are interested in learning more about this, we're doing one lecture specifically on how to manage expectations as a man. So what are the expectations that what are the expectations that are placed upon you? How do you navigate those and embrace some and shed the others? And then there's also a lecture on healthy masculinity, which I think is related to this too. So if y'all are interested in those lectures, join up with memberships. They're coming this month. Okay. Can you fully recover from porn? I went like over a year without porn. I recently relapsed after discovering a loophole in my blocking system. Oh my goodness. Outsmarted by yourself. And man, it felt just like it did when I was addicted. The same rush. I spent like 3 weeks binging almost every day after work. I closed the loophole only to discover more. Honestly, I found the process of uncovering loopholes pretty addictive too. Yeah, I can imagine. Anyway, I'm just curious about what this means. For over a year, I kind of forgot that porn existed. I never felt tempted and I just lived porn free. And now I'm back to being a full-blown addict. Is there a point where I'll be free, or do I always have to live in fear of my addict self popping its head out of nowhere? So this is such a great question. And so many things about it are so true of life, and so much of it is, we got to understand that this stuff, you can really be free of this in some ways, but it's in attitude. Okay. So let's understand how to be free from porn addiction. So in order to understand how to be free from porn addiction, we have to do two things. One is we have to understand porn addiction, and second is we have to understand freedom. And the biggest mistake that most addicts make is they do not understand freedom. Most of y'all can understand the addiction with just a little bit of teaching. It's really in understanding freedom that a lot of addicts really, really, really get messed up. Okay? So first, let's learn about porn addiction. So the first thing is, why do we get addicted to porn? We get addicted to porn for two reasons. So all addictions share two properties. One is all addictions make us feel better. And second is they stop us from feeling bad. These are two very discrete things. So one is it takes me when I'm feeling normal and makes me feel good. And the second is when I'm feeling bad, it makes me feel normal or it makes me feel good. So they bring pleasure and they take away pain. Now, a lot of times people think about pornography and addictions. They just think about the first thing. They think about making me feel better. And so pornography is dopaminergic. Masturbation is dopaminergic. Orgasm is dopaminergic. It's always going to make you feel good. But if we really look at addictions, it's not just the feeling good that creates the problem. It's actually taking away the negativity that is the real problem with porn addiction. So porn addiction is like some kind of cheat code for emotional feeling good. So if we look at like literally our brain has this part of there's a part of our brain called the amygdala and the limbic system. This is where we feel negative emotions. This is a very primitive part of the brain, right? So like you can even find an amygdala in like rodents and reptiles and probably even fish in some way. So we all have this capacity for negativity. Now, if we look at things that you can do that make the negativity go away instantly, pornography is at the top of the list. So anytime I'm feeling negative emotions, even if I'm not aware of them, by the way, which you don't need to be, porn will make that go away. So it's very, very effective. And if you look at people who are addicted to pornography, the most common thing is a sense of meaninglessness in life. So it's not even necessarily like a very powerful shame or something like that. The most common thing is actually like boredom, like not doing anything. And so literally the way that I would describe this is like, it's not like we're doing anything anyway. We might as well watch some porn. This is the sentiment that I've seen the most commonly with people who are addicted to pornography. Might as well. So if you want to be free from porn addiction, you've got to do two things. The most important thing is you have to have an alternate way to deal with your negative emotional states. You need something that works better than the pornography. Because when your brain is hurting, it's going to go for whatever works. That's how the brain works. When you're thirsty, your brain is like, let's get some water. That's how it works. When it's emotionally hurting, it's going to do whatever it can to bring itself back to equilibrium, which is pornography. So if you want to be free from porn, you need some way to manage your emotions. You can meditate, you can exercise, you can see a therapist, you can eat healthier, you can do whatever you want to. You can think, you can journal, whatever. But you need some consistent way to manage your negative emotions. Okay? Second thing is you need some kind of structure to stay away from pornography. So it sounds like this person developed some kind of system. The problem is that you can develop some kind of system, but as long as the underlying drive is not addressed, you will eventually relapse. Now, the second thing that this person asked, can you be free from pornography addiction? Now, this is where addicts make one big mistake with understanding freedom. They talk about freedom as if it's forever. Right? But this is the key thing that you need to understand if you want to conquer an addiction. Don't think about forever. Think about today. So what people want is they want a freedom. They want a relaxation. They want, oh my God, I'm free. I don't ever have to worry about this again. So if we stop and think about it, what do they want to be free from? They want to be free from the worry. They want to be free from the struggle. They want to be free from the negative emotions that come with pornography addiction. The effort. Right? And so you don't get freedom in that way. This is the first thing you've got to understand. You can't be free from negative emotion. And the reason that you want to be free from negative emotion is because porn is what you do to fix it, right? So the only way to get rid of the porn addiction forever is to feel good forever. Doesn't work like that. Good news is it doesn't need to. So let's understand something basic about freedom and addiction. Freedom of addiction is won in the moment. You don't win it in the future. So any day that you do not use porn, you are free from it in a sense. Okay, so you don't worry about forever. Worry about today. Worry about today. When tomorrow rolls around, worry about today. Worry about today. What are you going to do today? 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 Don't worry about tomorrow. Now, this is where people will say, but that's so exhausting, right? I want to be free. Tell me how to be free so that I don't have to work anymore. That's why people want freedom. I don't want to work anymore. I don't want to have to work at it. So the good news is it will get easier over time. So your brain will rewire, right? So you should focus on today, but every day is going to get easier. There may be hard days in there, but on the trend over the whole, every day will get easier. And there will reach a point where it will essentially be that you are free from pornography, that you don't think about it because you've developed so many neuronal habits. Your neurons have wired in a particular way where they're quite habitual, where you don't even think about it. Sounds like the person did it for a year. If you can do it for 1 year, you can do it for 2, right? There's nothing magical on day 366. It's just on a given day, you will slip up, and you can slip up after 1 year or 5 years or 10 years or 20 years. You can always slip up. So in that sense, are you ever free from it? Who knows? I'm going to go ahead and say no. And why am I saying no? Is it true? Not necessarily. But I need you to believe that there is no freedom. Why? Because if you believe there is no freedom, then you accept that there is a struggle on a daily basis. And the moment that you accept that, you grieve it and you say, fuck it, I got to take my medicine. It's going to be bitter. It's going to suck. This is where the freedom from addiction really comes from. Freedom from addiction comes from the fact that there is no freedom from addiction. And once you realize that this is a lifelong enemy that you're going to be living with and dealing with on a daily basis, then you will deal with it differently. You will stop fantasizing about freedom from it. And you're like, how do I become free? How do I become free? You're looking for a license to be lazy for the rest of your life. And it's in looking for that license for laziness for the rest of your life that you do the most damage. It's going to be a struggle every day. So be it. That's life. Y'all get that? Everyone's like, oh, I want to be free from work. Of course you want to be free from work. I want to be free from work too. But that's not life. Right? You have to decide what you want this life to be. Do you want a life of ease? Everyone's like, yeah, obviously. Like, I want it too. But it's okay not having it perfect. Right? It's okay to enjoy the moments of ease that you get, and it's okay to work during the other times. And I will tell you that the worst thing that you can do for yourself is a life of ease. Bottom of my heart, I believe this 100%. I've seen people who have a life of ease. I've addiction psychiatry. I've seen trust fund babies who have an unlimited amount of wealth, and boy, are they miserable. Drugs, and more drugs, because you're not fucking doing anything with your life. It's awful. And I want financial freedom too. Don't get me wrong. Like, it's great. Sounds great. But I'll tell you all something very important about the mind and the human being. It is a fundamental principle of biology. The body and mind do not wear out. They rust. We're very cool that way. We're the only thing in nature that gets better with usage. Life. Any inanimate object will decline over time. But if you want to be the healthiest human, you need to be using yourself. Learning a new instrument, having a pet, playing chess, learning a new language. All of these things are protective against dementia. When you breathe really hard at the gym, you are not shortening your lifespan because you're using all of your energy up. It's quite the opposite. The more you use the body, the better it becomes. We fucking level up. Everything else in the universe decays. So stop avoiding the struggle. The struggle will make you stronger. It will make you better. It will make you healthier. It will make you happier. This is why matchmaking works on the internet. Because the moment that you have a 95% win rate, you stop playing the game. Unless you're a fucking smurf, in which case, fuck you. But the rest of us are addicted to a 50% win rate. Because the struggle is what feels good. When do you love playing the game? Why can't y'all stop playing fucking video games? It's not because of the ones that you win. It's the ones that you win that you should have lost that keep you addicted. And this is what life is like. Right? So stop looking for a free pass. If you're going to be struggling with porn addiction for the rest of your life, you struggle with it for the rest of your life. Accept it. The good news, shockingly, I know it's crazy, and this may be a little bit unempathic, but the good news is that there is so much more to life than struggling with porn addiction. Can you ever be free of it? I don't know. But what I can guarantee is you can make it 1% of your life. You can fill your life up with other stuff. With books to read, with people to love, with sex to have, right? Financial freedom, working out, exercising, climbing a mountain, whitewater rafting. There's so much more to life than pornography addiction. So even if you've got it for the rest of your life, it's not my place to say that you can free it forever, although it definitely gets easier over time. We know that. We know that very well. So it will get easier over time, but don't try to look for a pass. That in and of itself is what reinforces the addiction. And this is why people at Alcoholics Anonymous figured this out. I'm celebrating my 40th year sober. Hi, my name is Alok and I am an alcoholic. Period. Never goes away. Because it's when you let your guard down that the addiction wins. This is the principle of addiction. The number one reason that people get owned by addiction is they think they're the ones in control. And if you have friends who are addicted, you know what I'm talking about. They're like, oh yeah, I don't have a problem. I would have a problem if ... Here's where I am. And people who are over here have the problem. And then if I move over here, then I'm going to say people over here have a problem. Oh yeah, people who use everyday, they're the ones who have a problem. And then you start using everyday. And someone was like, hey, didn't you say that people who use everyday have a problem? And you're like, no. But like, I'm different. I don't use a lot. I just use it to mellow out a little bit. There's some people who are really dependent on it, need it to have a good time. I can have a good time without it. I just choose not to. And so you always think, oh, I've got this under control. I can handle it. I'm in control. I can quit drinking whenever I want. I do this because I choose to. Those are the people who stay addicted. So admit that it's going to be a struggle. Admit that you're not in control. Admit that it's a fight and you could win and you could lose. That's how you break an addiction. Got it? Okay. You guys want to do one more post or a question or what? Shall we do a TikTok? Talking? TikTok? TikTok React? Yeah, so speaking of addictions and stoners and whatnot, so this is a one thing. So, if y'all want more lectures on this, by all means, become a member and vote for it. If y'all want to do a deep dive into porn addiction, I'm game. We're going to make videos about it anyway. Like we touch on porn addiction every now and then, but I'd love to do a deep dive. And so that's our goal with memberships, is really to have y'all choose what we lecture on. So we can do an hour or two or whatever y'all want. Okay, questions. Dr. K was just wondering if you have any tips for recovering from burnout/depression with all or nothing thinking. So I think when it comes to burnout and depression, one of the most underutilized tools is like cleaning and diet. So I think that, I know it's kind of weird, but so back when I was in my early days as a monk, I was at this one particular ashram when I got invited to join a cult. And so the way that this looked, or this is what I thought was happening, is at the end of one class, I'd been there for about 2 months. And someone comes up to me afterward and they're like, hey, there's this this secret part of there's this one road that no one is allowed to go down. And they told me that, hey, you should, next Tuesday at 10 a.m., you should walk down the road until you see the hut. And I'm like, what hut? And he's like, there's a hut. You should come. I think you're ready. And I was like, okay, this is how people join cults. So I went down the road, and sure enough, there's a hut. And in the hut is a Swami who's kind of like a monk. And so I started joining this class with like 6 other people. And it was like this secret class, right, where the secret knowledge is bestowed. But the thing about the class is that every day when I would walk towards the hut, I would see that outside the hut is a plate, a bowl, a spoon, and a cup drying in the sun. And then one day I asked the Swami who was teaching the class, I was like, what's up with the plate, the bowl, the spoon, and the cup? And the Swami told me that the one thing that he has to do every day is clean his own dishes. And that without cleaning his own dishes, he cannot sit down to meditate. The people in the ashram will provide the food. They can do the cooking. They'll bring him 1 meal a day, which he has. But then the one thing he's got to do is he's got to clean himself, because his mind just doesn't function without cleaning. And I don't know what it is, but something about cleaning your environment is very, very helpful to the mind. Actually, we have some hypotheses of why that happens, but I don't know why. Maybe it's something about the mobility. I think it has something to do with like using physical motion that is mentally engaging enough to where you have to somewhat pay attention, but allows your mind to run on autopilot. Cleaning is almost like a poor person's EMDR, if y'all know what that is. So eye movement desensitization retraining or whatever is a treatment for trauma. And what we essentially do in EMDR is we have someone focus their eyes in a particular pattern, so it requires cognitive attention. And we ask them to recall, or even we'll read back or have them talk about traumatic experiences. So normally when we discuss or talk about traumatic experiences, it triggers a physiologic response. Our adrenaline shoots the roof, our cortisol goes up, because recalling the trauma creates a flashback. But when we do EMDR and someone is focusing on something else, it blunts the physiologic response. So instead of being in the trauma, I'm just kind of like distractedly doing it on the side while I'm focused on something else. Kind of like having a conversation with your significant other when you're browsing the internet on your phone, right? So you're not like mentally there. So we've used that principle to treat people with trauma. And cleaning is really interesting because when we clean, I think it does something very similar, where our mind has 50% autopilot, it's just kind of processing. And then at the same time, we're sort of doing something a little bit physical, so we don't get lost in our thoughts when we clean. So my tip is clean. If a person is in denial of harsh truths to save getting their feelings hurt, does that lead to schizophrenia? I don't think so. But it's very possible that there is a psychoanalytic theory that says so. So I'm of the mind of a little bit more biological mind of what causes schizophrenia, which is that it's like probably like a pretty discrete biological process. I think schizophrenia is one of the less psychological of illnesses, although I'm no expert in schizophrenia. Okay. I guess last question, and then we're done for the day. But this is a dating one, I guess. Hey, Dr. K, I think I have gotten a crush on a girl, but there is a real possibility that if I ask her out or confess, we may never talk again. Ending our friendship is paralyzing me. Any advice? Yes, so much advice. Number one advice, if you have a crush on someone, no confessions. No confessions. Confessions are terrible. Let's understand why. So if you have a crush on someone, you have a little bit of emotion. Your love starts down here. Okay, I'm not pointing to my penis. I'm trying to point to my belly button. So love starts in the belly button and works its way up to the chest. And when it gets to about the throat, right? So this is like it starts down here with butterflies in the stomach. And then we feel that aching over here. And if we let the love build up too much, it ends up in our throat as a lump and we can't say anything. And then we feel crippled. That's how love works physiologically. It's scientific, okay? So when you're in a relationship with someone, let's say who's a friend, and you signal to them that you're attracted to them and that you want to go on a date, confessing means letting all this crap that is built up out. So you're not just like telling them, you're dumping all of this like pent up love and, oh my God, I need you so bad. Oh, I've been loving you for all of this time and I need you in my life. Right? You can't dump that shit on people. Come on. And this is why everyone has this bad impression of like confessing your feelings for a friend. This is why everyone thinks it's so damn hard to get out of the friend zone. It's because you're strapped into a fucking rocket and they're on a donkey and you guys are just moving at completely different paces. Remember that when you have been in love with someone for a long time, you have had a chance to acclimatize to that, right? You've been loving this person for like 10 years. And so you're used to that level of love. They're just figuring it out for the first time and you're dumping 10 years of feelings on them. Or 6 months, whatever your case is. So number one is don't confess. Right? This is what ends the relationship. Second thing is if you want to ask someone out, you can ask them out. But I know this is absolutely insane. But if you have a friend and y'all are friends and you want to preserve the friendship, you have one card that you can play that none of the alpha red pillars can play because they're not friends with women. You get to have a friendly conversation. You get to say, hey, you are my friend. I value you as a friend. And I've noticed some feelings kind of rising up where I've started to think about you in like a slightly romantic way. I was hoping to have a conversation with you about this. You're going to approach it from as a friend. What should I do with these feelings? Help me figure out what should I do with these feelings. Right? Let's figure this out as friends. This is a shared problem in our relationship, which is maybe I've got some romantic feelings. And you put the ball in their court. Let them know what's going on. Now, if someone wants to sever a friendship with you because of that, right? Like you can't really control that. But usually, having worked with a ton of, I'm assuming that this is a guy talking about a girl, having worked with a ton of women, they don't have a problem with you telling them that you have feelings. They have a problem with a confession, pressure, and guilt, which if you approach it as a friend, you can say, hey, these are feelings that we can talk about. What should I do with these feelings? Now, one of several things will happen. One is maybe they'll run away, but generally speaking, I don't think that's going to happen because we don't handle the conversation right as dudes. It's a confession. Oh my God. We don't know how to talk about emotions without vomiting them all over the place. So just like talk about them. Just be like, hey, sometimes like I've been having some weird thoughts, like romantic thoughts. Sexual. Don't say anything sexual. Okay? Nothing sexual. Just use, hey, I've been having some like kind of romantic feelings. Is this something that's ever come up for you? Is this something that we should explore, or is this something that I should like go talk to a therapist about? Right? So just like lay it out there for them to play with, because that's what happens in a relationship. The problem with all these confessions is that you've created all this stuff in your head and then you dump it on the other person. The other person's like, what is this? Where did this come from? You built up this weird skyscraper about who I am and what our relationship is. Y'all are friends. You work through it together. Other cool thing is that oftentimes you will find that when you do this, it works out really well. You will discover that, wow, they will actually see you as an emotionally available person. And they may have some degree of attraction as well. But the fact that y'all can actually talk about it like human beings is like a step up in your favor. And I think like people say it's impossible to get out of the friend zone. You should move on. I mean, like, yeah, you should move on if someone's not interested in you. But I think that I want to say like 30 or 40% of the relationships that I've seen, people start out as friends. Like it happens quite a bit. Like people move out of the friend zone all the time. Happens a lot. The problem that we run into is we get so caught up about doing it that we put all of our eggs into one basket. We want to force it. That is actually what sabotages it. Right? So the right move is to confess your love, not confess, but let everyone know that you're having romantic thoughts if they're your friends. Right? So I think don't confess your love. Oh my God, dude, so much to handle. Just let them know, like, hey, like, I sometimes have these feelings. And then watch them get flustered. Be like, hey, would you ever, want to consider changing this relationship? And I wouldn't say more than being friends, by the way. Don't ever say more than friends, because it implies that other things are greater than friendship. Friendship is equal to romance, right? When you start treating it that way, people will receive it a lot better. Would you ever be interested in exploring something besides friendship? Right? Just ask. And if they get turned off and they ghost you and stuff like that, you get your signal and then you talk it through and then you make a decision and then you're done. If they're not receptive, then you move on. And don't be surprised when you move on that they change their tune, because it happens. So just be casual about it? Absolutely. There's nothing more attractive than being casual. In other words, don't act needy and desperate. Haha. Yes, that is correct. From Giselle, no less. So pay attention, boys and girls. So Mr. Pushup is saying, lost me a homegirl because of this, and that's okay. Right? It's okay. If we want to make healthy relationships, we have to be willing to lose relationships. That's part of making a healthy relationship. It has to be tested and strengthened and is born with conflict. That's how it happens. Packets is saying, Dr. K, what if I want to meet a girl casually in a bar? Then stop hanging out here is my guess. Go meet a girl casually in a bar. Right? Look, everyone's saying confidence is sexy. Casual is confident. Yeah, so look, let me explain something to y'all, okay? So sure, all that stuff is true, but just forget about being confident or sexy for the other person you're trying to attract. Just think about yourself for a moment. How do you want to live your life? Do you want to live your life with all these worries in your head? Oh my God, what if she says this? And what if I confess all my feelings? And what if she doesn't like it? And oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Just chill the fuck out, man. Like, look, if she doesn't like it, she doesn't like it. If he doesn't like it, he doesn't like it. You are going to be tranquil up here, right? So you have some feelings. Hey, I've got this feeling like it's like this cup of water and like maybe I can drink from it. That's how it should be. Right? You want this job? You can tell people, hey, I'm really interested in this job. I'm excited about it for this, this, and this reason. The problem is when we let our excitement become an attachment. The problem is when we start planning around something that hasn't happened yet. So let go of the attachment. Let go of everything you attach to this interaction. Your self-worth as a man. Oh my God, she won't talk to me. This one person rejected me and now I don't feel like a man. That's okay. One person rejected you. There are 1,000 reasons why people reject other people that have nothing to do with you. Biggest mistake that we make in our society is we take rejections personally. Right? And the reason we do that is because some people try to make it personal. So don't get so caught up in here. Just be chill about it, right? You want to be chill, not for confidence or attraction or anything like that. Like, okay, so do I want this person saying no to ruin a month of my life or 3 months of my life? The answer is no. Okay, so I'm going to be chill about it, right? I'll feel hurt. You acknowledge that. So how do you be chill about it? You accept, first of all, that there's a part of you that does not want to be chill. That's step number one of being chill. Accept that you don't want to be chill. Step number 2 is you don't get caught up in here. So literally, if we look at what does it mean to be chill, it means spending less space up here. So if we look at something like a panic attack, which is the exact opposite of chill, literally what happens in the mind with a panic attack, we perseverate or ruminate on a particular thought. The more that your mind turns a thought over and over and over and over and over in your head, the less chill you will be. So literally to not think about it is to be less chill. So then the question becomes, but Dr. K, how do I not think about it? Very simple. Look at the scenarios in which you do think about it. So you think about it when your mind is idle. You think about it when you've been playing too many video games. You think about it in that post-nut clarity. You think about it before you go to bed. You don't think about it when you are spending time with your dog. You don't think about it when you're spending time with your friends. You don't think about it when you're reading a really good book or when you're super engaged in a video game. Right? So number 1 is notice that you're attached. Number 2 is literally spend time doing other things with your mind, not just a distraction. So this is important. Some people will make it a distraction to keep it at bay. And the moment the distraction goes away, the thoughts return. We want to do something that engages the mind, not distracts the mind. And once the mind has had some engagement, so I would say like adopt a project, like do something a little bit creative, like put something out there into the world. Then the mind will be a little bit fatigued. It'll have that less of excess energy. And if it has less excess energy, you will be less likely to ruminate. We have a whole lecture on this on Dr. K's Guide to Anxiety, by the way, around thought loops, if y'all want a better understanding of that. And this is how you be chill. And the third thing that you can do is think about the long term, right? This one person, there's 1,000 other people out there. Just give this a shot and think about, even if this does not work well, your goal in this, if it works out, great. If it doesn't work out, you will get better at managing yourself. So everything in life is about creating a better you for tomorrow. Now you've been rejected by one person. This will make the second rejection easier. You've leveled up a little bit. So think about the long game. And then when you have those 3 things, your conversation with this person will be easier, right? Because when they say no, you're not torn out of shape. You can say, thank you very much for telling me how you feel. I hope we can still continue to maintain a friendship. If it becomes weird for you, please let me know. If it becomes hard for me, I will let you know. And then you fist bump. And then you move on with your life. Right? So this is how we get so caught up with our attachments, because it's all we give our mind time to do. And then if you guys really want number 4, which will both sometimes create jealousy, but, a week or 2 later, you ask said friend, you can say, hey, Anyone you can set me up with, I'm interested in dating. Right? So this is what people don't understand about the friend zone. Friend zone is a great place to meet women if we're talking about a dude and a girl, or vice versa, right? Or friend zone for people who are gay, totally works. Just ask people to introduce you to other people, right? And that signals to your friend that you're not interested in them. You've moved on, and hopefully they don't get butthurt about it, but sometimes they will, and then they'll start playing games with you because they actually are attracted to you, and now you know, right? It's a win-win. That feels manipulative. I can imagine. The purpose is not to, so here's the thing. Manipulation is about shaping someone else's behavior. Okay? So we're not doing this to shape their behavior. I have a big problem with people who are manipulative. We're not doing this to be manipulative. We're not trying to get them. We're not trying to make them jealous. All I'm saying is that you shouldn't be stupid about this may excite some jealousy. If there was some degree of attraction, it may float to the surface, which is fine, right? And then you, as friends, you will talk through it. It's not to try to get her to like you. In fact, that's the wrong thinking. That's not being chill about it. That's being overly attached. That's unhealthy for you and unhealthy for them. Yeah, so I wonder how people who can't even ask the other one out imagine the relationship will go. That's the thing, right? So at some point, we've got to stop imagining and start doing. You will do so much better when you start collecting data instead of running hypotheticals. Hi, Dr. K. How do you personally weigh your innate goodness and morality against the temporary and impulsive streamer sense to perform? You seem to be as true of yourself as you are a streamer. Well, yeah. So cool question. Let's understand a couple things. The reason I'm myself as a streamer is because this is what I am in real life. So the cool thing about streaming is that you don't have to be something else. I mean, some people are, but it's too cognitively exhausting, for me to try to be something. I'm just not. And this is who I am. And people who, I imagine there's some people who are watching this or who may watch this who know who I am in real life. And the really frustrating thing is that even my kids recognize that there's Dr. K. And one of my kids actually trolls me about it now. She makes fun of me for being Dr. K. It's actually really cute, and I love her for it. So the other thing is that I don't think I have innate goodness or morality, for the record. And so the only thing that I try to perform is I try to be myself, and I try to be a good version of myself. So not the most degenerate, but I think part of what makes me, I'm assuming I'm a good streamer here, but I think part of what resonates with people is that I'm a little bit degenerate, right? Like we all are, to be honest. And so it's like, I'm not innately good. In fact, I think that the real struggle, so I just tell you all a story. So I was in my second year of psychiatry training. I had an attending who was brilliant and was told me that, hey, so I see that you're very capable, but I encourage you to use your capability for good instead of evil. Because I think she accurately assessed that I have a side of me that is not good. I'm very good with people, but I can get people to do good things or I can get people to do bad things. And she was an awesome teacher and one of the few people who saw that quality within me, whereas everyone else just thought I was a really nice guy. But she was like, I can see that some of your niceness is crafted, and just don't be an evil person. And even to this day, I'm grateful to her, and I took her advice to heart. And I'm not great by any means. I'm a degenerate just like y'all. Instead of doing my work this morning, I played about 40 minutes of Against the Storm, which is a great game that y'all should check out, by the way, if y'all are into roguelite city builders. Yeah, so I try to be the good kind of degenerate. And the reason, so here's the difference between a good degenerate and a bad degenerate. A good degenerate loves their degeneracy, and a bad degenerate demonizes their degeneracy. So the whole point of being a degenerate is we're fucking human, man. We're designed to become obese. We're designed to be lazy. We're designed to be efficient. Do y'all understand that laziness and efficiency is the same thing? It's like to do more with less. Like that's encourages laziness. Like that's why we do things, right? We are so efficient and we are so lazy as a race that we have developed technology that has become so advanced that we literally now force ourselves to go to a gymnasium to uselessly lift weight up and down with no purpose in mind. We're literally going to a place and we're like lifting weight up and down. We're doing work for no objective. Like these muscles were designed to lift things and carry them from point A to point B, to lift other human beings or fight predators. And instead, we literally will manufacture hunks of iron and just lift them repetitively like fucking gerbils on hamster wheels. Because we have gotten so efficient. I can haul my ass to a car, which will then save me the work of walking. I will take elevators to save me the work of stairs. And I will not even have to walk to the car, and I will now use this thing to send some electrons out into the universe that will then deliver me tacos to my front door. This is how efficient and lazy we are as people. We just have to understand this. This is part of who we are. And you have a degenerate within you who doesn't want to do anything today, and that's okay. That person is not the enemy. That's you. The problem is when we demonize it, sometimes we win, and sometimes it wins. And when it wins, it punishes us for all the war crimes that we've committed to it. I've taken that degeneracy and I have told it that it is a terrible human being, and I've torn it apart. And instead, I'm going to be a Uber Chad, a side hustle hustler. And now you can purchase my course on how to hustle people into side hustling, which is my nth tier hustle. This is what we've become. Photons, not electrons. Thank you, Stephen. Right? So, like, it's okay to be a little bit of a degenerate. Everyone's like, oh, like, I used to be such a loser, and, like, now I'm so great. I'm like, brah, I was a loser then. I'm a loser now. You don't have to be a loser, doesn't have to define you. You can continue to be a loser and still be very successful. Worked really well for me. Seriously. That's what y'all should do. Just do it. Like, it's okay. Like, you're a little bit degenerate, and some days the degenerate's going to win. And how upset can you really be? Right? Because, hey, you had fun that day. Say, good job, degenerate. Thanks for giving us a break. We got to do some work today. Can you help me out? Can you try really hard not to sabotage me further? Okay, there's a question. Last question, then we're going, okay? Fadi is asking, hey, Dr. K, after my first relationship, I've had a lot of success with, let's say, superficial dating, which grew old fairly fast. And now, after having been in a lot of those, I haven't been able to find anyone to have something deeper anymore. What should I do? So if you've had a meaningful relationship followed by a string of empty or shallow relationships, two options. One is that you haven't found the right person, right? Which is very possible. The second, though, is that you're not really emotionally open to something deeper. So the main question is, how did your first relationship end? And have you really fully recovered from that? Do you have space in you for another relationship like that? And oftentimes what happens when our first relationship ends is we get kind of scarred over, right? This is what happens. Anytime we have a wound, the body and the mind will scar over it. This is why people who are traumatized will repress memories. Like, it's literally how we function biologically. And so if you're having trouble forming a connection, I'd really look at what was the aftermath of your first relationship. And are you really ready to meet someone? Or do you want to be in that kind of relationship again? Because you may not be ready yet. You may not want it, right? So I'd kind of process the old relationship and make sure that you're emotionally available for a new one. Okay? All right. So we're at time for today, chat. Been at this almost 3 hours. So one last time, we are sharing our big announcement for the day, which is that we are launching YouTube memberships. And Reason we're doing memberships is because we want to teach more advanced, in-depth stuff that is chosen by y'all. And so our membership is $9.99 a month for 4 lectures a month. The lectures are 1 hour in length, followed by Q&A, all delivered live, and I think they should be available as VODs afterward. Part of the reason that we want y'all to sign up is because every month we will vote, and I will spend 6 to 8 hours preparing whatever lectures y'all want me to prepare. So this is community meets content. We also get freed from a lot of these standard problems that we run into with content generation. Number one, we're not victims to the algorithm anymore. Y'all can ask me to make a video that will tank in the general YouTube algorithm, and that is what I will prepare a lecture on. Right now, we got to play the game because we're on YouTube. That's what everyone has to do. Second thing is we get to go to more advanced topics. So the idea is to create, for all the members who have hopefully been, because y'all are like watching these and paying money, right? So these are people who are going to be interested in this stuff. Then we can get to more advanced things. So we can do longitudinal things, like someone was asking about tips about meditation. So we can do multiple lectures on meditation for whatever y'all decide. So every month y'all get to vote. I will prepare the lectures. We will deliver them live. It'll be 4 a month. It's not necessarily 1 a week. So sometimes we'll cluster things. Sometimes it'll be a little bit more spread out. And this in no way impacts the rest of the content that we make. We will continue putting out lectures, deep dives, YouTube videos as we normally do. Streams. Last thing is we have a second pricing tier of $14.99 for people who want to give us more money. It's literally what it's about. You will get access to some features that other people, the base tier doesn't get, but those are features like Right in the Fields or early access to other things that we're building. But really the reason to do that is if you want to just give us more money. Simple. What does the money do? The money does everything that all of the other money does. So that's how we continue to make free content. We have like a research team. We have an editing team, things like that, right? So we'll continue building stuff like Right in the Fields is a community event that required a lot of moderation, dev time to program new features. All of that was completely free. We also do a lot of research, so it'll fund all that stuff. It's just going where all the other money is going. Building a guide is a significant investment too. So we had to build those before we could charge for them, if that kind of makes sense. So it gives us runway as a company to like try building new things. That's really what we want it for. Will there be more streams on YouTube? Yes. We will continue our regular streaming schedule on Twitch and YouTube. Okay? The way we arrived at the price is we saw what other people were doing, and we saw that a lot of people are having like $6 memberships or whatever for like basically nothing. Or I mean, not nothing. You get badges and whatever, but we were sort of trying to think about how can we keep things affordable for people who are from countries where the dollar doesn't do well. So we've heard a lot of feedback about things like coaching pricing and stuff like that. I mean, that's just a challenge that we face. So this is also the cheapest thing that we've ever offered, and we're trying to really pack it with value so you really get your money's worth. Okay? That's a lot of streams overall. Yes, it is. So I will be spending about 30 to 40% of my time every week working on membership-related stuff. Will these lectures always be member only? I don't know is the short answer. So if we wanted to change that one day, we would ask the members. Is how I'm thinking about it now. I mean, I don't know though. I mean, it's possible that after 6 months or something, we'll release them. I don't know. But there are no plans to make them publicly available at this point. Yeah. And then there's the emotes and stuff too. Yeah, so there's someone from Brazil and stuff like that. Like, we get that, right? So even though we get all kinds of, we try to do what we can. And we've have, people in 121 countries, including places like Swaziland and Ethiopia and stuff like that. So we're doing what we can. There'll be VODs of the lectures that we do for members. There'll be a VOD of this too today. Are you still doing interviews? Yeah. I think we've got an interview coming up soon, hopefully. Let me see. Okay, there's Reddit review stream on ADHD. Yeah, it looks like we're doing an interview in about 2 weeks. And maybe more. Okay. All right, y'all. Thank you very much for showing up today. Thank y'all for all the support. It's allowed us to build this kind of runway. And then the last thing about memberships is y'all decide what the lectures are. The first month, we're going to do male mental health. So we did an informal poll of the community, and these were the topics that came up. Managing expectations as a man, developing healthy masculinity, emotions 101 for men, and deep dive into depression for men. And then y'all get to choose the rest of the stuff. And I'm super excited about that because I'm tired of trying to imagine what y'all need and what y'all want. Why don't y'all just tell me? And then I will prepare a lecture about it. I'm super excited because now I get to turn to all this stuff and try to figure out answers to questions. Because secretly, sometimes I'll only try to answer the questions that I can come up with an answer. But I sometimes wonder what would happen if I was forced to answer a question that I didn't have an answer to or didn't want to answer. That'd be interesting, huh? Anyway, so we'll see how it goes. We're giving this a shot. We really hope y'all will join us. And I'm super excited about being able to go in depth with the people who are interested in it and being able to go longitudinally for people who are with us for a while.